Ben-Gvir and Mr. Smotrich, who have said, respectively, that they would not want the second phase of the peace deal to go ahead, and the peace deal was to establish a permanent roadmap to peace. And one of them has said that they would like Israel to occupy at least part of Gaza, the Gaza Strip, full-time.
So is this a stop to what we're seeing, or is it just a delaying tactic? Because Trump has made it very clear that this, if this isn't in place by the time he's inaugurated, there will be hell to pay.
Oh, you've taken the words out of my mouth, yeah. No, and I think that we've got to look at one of the real successes so far, and admitted, I think, by most sides, is Mr. Witkoff, his special envoy, who is of Jewish origin himself, and he talks very tough to Netanyahu, and he will come into play now. And I think, if you're doing a forecast of long-term relationships, don't bet on a long-term relationship between Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu.
But this deal, always looked so vague. You wondered how it was going to happen, because clearly Benjamin Netanyahu was insisting on a list of names.
33.
Yes, yeah. Of people who would be delivered today, or at least over the next few days or weeks, and the list has never materialised. And of course that makes you very suspicious, and it must make him terribly suspicious. Does Hamas even know where these people are?
They're not all Hamas, or not all the hostages, sorry to interrupt, but not all the hostages appear to be held by Hamas. Some are held by this minority group, very tough, Islamic Jihad. And as you say, it's open to doubt as to if anybody really knows where they are. There are two things going on here. One, as you rightly say, is the list of the hostages, the 33, the first 33 to be delivered. 3, we understood, were to go across the border into Egypt, being taken over by the Red Cross or Red Crescent, possibly female soldiers, former female male soldiers. But the other is the list of Palestinian prisoners that the various Palestinian organisations, and of course it's not just Hamas, it's of course Fatah, of the Palestinian Authority on the West Bank. And this is where Netanyahu, Likud, are very, very worried. They're worried particularly about one man, which is Marwan Barghouti, who is a charismatic figure. He's a brilliant man. He's in on terrorism charges of murder. He's been in for a long time. But he and his cousin, who is out, are very, very powerful forces. They're a new political force, or newish. And the Israeli right, the mainstream democratic right, like Likud, for example, the Likud bloc of Benjamin Netanyahu, seem to be very worried about this element. So it's back to your point. There are so many known unknowns. They're not unknown unknowns. They're known unknowns about this. And then we can go into the whole security picture, which is just simply dreadful.
Well, why is it then that when we have these, and we've seen it over many years, and when Israel release prisoners in return in these sort of deals, there is always a huge number released. And then there's someone like Marwan Barghouti, as you say, who causes such concern. Why would he even be on the list?
Well, he would be on the list because he is actually mainstream of a really rather typical, stereotypical figure, because if you talk to the Palestinians, and by that I don't mean the hard jihadi Palestinians, they see him as their Nelson Mandela. Right. He's one of these people, like Jomo Kenyatta, I think of that, who are banged up on very serious terrorist charges and then lead their nation. And that's the point, because he is the symbol of whether you're going to have a two-state solution. There's so much wrapped in this role that it's going to take a long time to tease out, and I think that's where Team Trump must be quite fearful, because this isn't a quick fix.
No, but Trump has said there will be hell to pay if this doesn't happen today. If this doesn't happen today, what will he do?
I think there will be a lot of arm twisting. I've mentioned his special envoy, but there's also the envoy to Israel, who is a heavyweight, Mike Huckabee, Rubio. They will be saying things semi-publicly, I suspect, to Netanyahu, and it's going to be this. We cannot go on bankrolling you to the extent that we have been doing, especially since October the 7th, 2023, when the whole thing kicked off with the terrible massacre outside Gaza at the festival and so on. But these things are very costly, that they've replenished Iron Dome, the defense arrangement. They've been giving a lot of bombs and bullets and very advanced weaponry. I mean, the F-35 plane, which is crucial to this, is the most advanced in the world, and it has operational experience, but it costs. It is very, very expensive, all this. And one thing, curiously, that Trump and his team seem not to want is an all-out war with Iran. I have to say that since the very successful Israeli bombing of Iran in October, I don't think Iran is in for it too. But there's somebody who really does want war with Iran, or has repeatedly said he wanted it, and it was Benjamin Netanyahu.
Mm-hmm. But the Qataris, who seem to have put so much work into trying to achieve something by today, I mean, what are they going to think as well? Can they put any more pressure on anybody, or have we reached a stalemate?
Well, they'll be talking to the political leadership of Hamas, and this is the great Hamas paradox, which the likes of particularly Mr. Smotrich, the finance minister, point to, that the war aim post-October the 7th, 18 months ago, was to destroy Hamas. That clearly, whatever you say, hasn't happened, to the extent that there are still Hamas fighters. They've written down a lot of their capability, but they can still do quite a lot. There's probably between 10,000, around 10,000, a little bit above fighters. And for goodness sake, such is the state of anarchy, and one of the big unknowns is the real state of play in northern Gaza, that they're saying that it may have to be policed by Hamas police in uniform.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Yeah.
It's like
but there's nobody else, you see.
Meanwhile, it's just worth touching on over here, there were pro-Palestinian protests in London. 77 people arrested, allegedly, for breaching the peace. I mean, the global temperature on this is still very hot.
That's what you have to really look at. The fact is that whatever has been going on, the terrible scenes in Gaza, that, and this is an awful warning for Sir Keir Starmer, Mr. Lawfare Starmer, let's do it all by law, let's do it by human rights. The militant left is coming, the noise of the militant left across Europe, particularly, and in the States, and Trump is very worried about it, has been captured by the Palestinian movement.
Interesting times, indeed. OK, Robert.
You feel as though anything could happen in the next few minutes. Well, it could go one way.
Yeah, that's why I will be back in the programme.
Yes.
Yeah,
well,
because we don't know.
Well, it's worth asking you then, do you think, whether it's 6:30 or whether it's pushed back slightly, do you think this will go ahead today?
I think something will start. And sorry, I shouldn't say this, but I fear something will also stop. Right. And I think that, and the worst possible thing is, could you believe it, elements outside even the control of Hamas may make an attempt, as my continental friends say. You know, by that I mean use violence to disrupt the whole thing. And we've seen this tendency on the most extreme wing of the settler movement too.
Yeah. OK, Robert, for now, thank you.
Don't go away. Yes, exactly. Let's turn our attention then to what's happening in Washington, because it's just a day until Donald Trump's historic inauguration for the second time.
He's arrived in Washington, D.C. overnight. There was a protest march against his presidency in the nation's capital at the same time.
Well, we're joined now by the deputy editor of Spectator, who we know well, but he's over there, Freddie Gray. And a very good day to you, Freddie. I can't remember what time of day it is with you. What's the atmosphere like there? And actually, particularly the political atmosphere, in view of what we've just been talking about.
Well, good morning to you both. I went onto that march this morning, and it was pretty small, I have to say. It was fairly insignificant. It felt a little bit lifeless. And I remember in 2016, I was here in 2016, and the resistance, the anti-Trump movement then was really very powerful and quite frightening, quite violent. This was more of a sad, clapped out affair. And I would say that the sort of general mood is obviously a lot of MAGA Trump people have descended onto Washington. Washington's a very democratic city, obviously. But the mood here is one of sort of great anticipation among MAGA Republicans that we are at a sort of turning point in history. And I mean, the natural cynic in me starts to doubt it very much. But there is definitely a strong mood of optimism here.
It's been a very odd couple of months, hasn't it? Because Trump has basically been president for the last couple of months. That's what it feels like. His influence, as soon as the election was called, his influence has started having impact, as we're seeing in the Middle East and with Israel and Hamas. Which is why, what is he likely to do if this deal today, this ceasefire, doesn't actually start?
Well, I was listening with great interest to Robert, who is very brilliant on this, and he's absolutely right that relations between Team Trump and Netanyahu are very precarious at the moment. And of course, Trump is publicly a great supporter of Israel. But I think there's this odd paradox, whereas Biden was publicly ambivalent or sometimes a bit critical of Israel, but privately, although you hear different things about this, but privately I would say the administration were quite supportive. Trump is almost a little bit the opposite. Publicly, absolutely behind Israel. We'll do everything they want. All hell will break loose if Hamas don't return hostages. But privately, I think pushing Netanyahu quite hard. And I think they, as far as sort of the Trump inner circle are concerned, they would like this to be out the way because they want Monday to be this, huge moment of great Trump arrival. And they don't want this failed peace deal to be dominating the headlines, when what they want is this first day, 100 executive orders, a flurry of legislation, a blizzard of legislation, one Republican senator called it. And they want it to be all sort of good news and moving America in the right direction. They don't want to be distracted by this.
And talking of blizzards, the weather still very, very cold in Washington, freezing up, so much so that they are taking most of today's ceremony inside. Is that right?
That is right. I actually think they're being a little bit pathetic. Apparently, it is going to get a lot colder in the next few hours. But at the moment, it's not that bad. There is snow, but it's certainly bearable. But I gather Donald Trump was very concerned about the horses. He was worried that horses would freeze to death outside. And that was one of the main factors going on. Of course, there's a lot of chatter as well that the real reason is security. There's a great security threat. And that's actually why it's gone inside into the Capitol Rotunda. But I think the official line, which is probably true, is that they're expecting very cold weather.
And of course, usually they do the family walk up Pennsylvania Avenue, don't they? And even that's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. The schedule is that he will go to the Capital One Arena, which is a kind of sports center in central Washington, where there will be lots of Trump fans. And so he'll make the plan is he'll make an appearance there, but we don't quite know. I think for Trump people, the essential thing is the swearing-in ceremony will happen, and then at some point he may go via the Capital One Arena, or he may go straight to the White House and sign all these orders. Some people are saying 100 executive orders, which would be, I think, the most ever by a president on his first day.
Can I ask you about Lord Mandelson? Because there's lots of tittle-tattle around that Lord Mandelson, who's being, the number 10, want to be our man in Washington, that Trump may be seriously saying, I don't want him, I'm not going to have him.
Well, the funny thing is, I think Keir Starmer thought by getting Karen Pierce out and bringing in Mandelson, he was getting rid of someone that Trump wouldn't like and bringing in someone that they would. And actually, the opposite may be true. I think Karen Pierce, to her credit, had tried to build relations with the incoming administration. They'd been having conversations about various things. And then this change-up happens. And I think some of Trump's team Indeed, Chrysler Zavita, who was the campaign manager of Trump's election campaign, said he didn't like it. He wasn't happy because they had been talking to Karen Pierce. And they're very interested in Britain. I mean, as you know, GB News' Nigel Farage knows, Team Trump, they talk a lot about Britain. I went to an event last night that was very transatlantic atmosphere, lots of major Trump world people there. And they want to talk about Britain a lot, and they're very concerned about Keir Starmer's government. They keep saying, you know, what can we do? We wish we could do something to rid you of this terrible Labour government. And you think, well, you know, you can't really interfere with our democracy, but nice of you to offer.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Freddie, we'll catch up with you later. Thanks very much indeed.
All the best.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be... I mean, it's just fascinating politics at the moment.
It's quite historic, isn't it?
Oh, it is indeed, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens, what all these executive orders are going to be, and so to say a blizzard of legislation on day one.
That's it. Well, he wants to come in, you know, I don't know, in a big flurry, doesn't he? But what he really wanted to be able to do was achieve some sort of a peace deal in Israel, Gaza, and is it happening or is it not? Anything could happen.
Well, one thing which may or may not be happening is TikTok in the States. You'll have seen this over the last few days, and about TikTok, because it's run by China. There's concerns about security around TikTok and all the rest of it. Anyway, so the States basically, well, they are banning it, actually. They're banning it today. But nothing's going to change because the new administration comes in tomorrow. And Donald Trump seems to be saying, well, I might give it a 90-day reprieve.
Yeah. And Biden, who is still a president at the moment, has said he won't enforce it because there's a new administration coming in.
Yeah, so it is technically banned, but nothing's going to happen yet. Anyway, we're asking in our poll of the day today, should TikTok be banned in the UK, as it technically is in the US, for today at least. We'll bring you live results throughout the day. Final result in Nana's show later. And if you want to vote, go to gbnews.com/poll.
Well, we were talking about the weather in Washington, D.C. Let's hope it is getting cold, and there apparently are little flurries of snow in certain places in Britain, but I don't think it's anywhere near as bad. Here's Catherine Chalk with the weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, we hold on to the cloudy theme and feeling cold with some rain for some in the west. So through this morning and the rest of the afternoon, then a cloudy picture across much of the UK with drizzle and perhaps even some snow grains just moving their way northwards into the Midlands. Further towards the north, as particularly across northern parts of Scotland, that's where we'll see the best of the sunshine through this afternoon, with rain gradually trying to approach from the west into Northern Ireland and western parts of Scotland. Otherwise, a cold feeling day, especially underneath this blanket of cloud, mildest temperatures further towards the west. As we go through Sunday evening and overnight, then we hold on to the clearest skies across northern and eastern parts of Scotland. Temperatures quickly falling away here, perhaps with a touch of frost. We'll start to see this weather front approach the Western Isles, bringing some rain, and for western parts of Northern Ireland as well, but colder across northern England and Wales. We may see some breaks in the cloud to give a touch of frost as well, but otherwise largely dry with a lot of cloud as we go Sunday night and into Monday morning. So as we go through the evening, then we've got this band of rain continuing to move its way slowly eastwards into western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, and eventually into northern England. Across much of England and Wales, though, hold on to a lot of cloud. Some clear spells that may allow temperatures to fall to give a touch of frost and some mist and fog patches. So another cold start to Monday morning, touch of frost in places, but again, a lot of cloud around. There will be some showers across northwestern parts of Scotland with some sunshine here and some rain just sinking into parts of northern Wales as well. But on the whole, largely a dry picture on Monday. Temperature just slightly up on what we've seen over the weekend, highs of 5 to 9 degrees. Bye-bye for now.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, the main news this morning, of course, is the ceasefire, the Israel-Hamas ceasefire, meant to come into force in 6 minutes. There is a problem, though. That list of names of the 33 hostages that were due to be released over the next 6 weeks in this first phase hasn't yet been released. Hamas says it's down to a technical field issue, but as a result, the Israeli Prime Minister has said, well, it's not happening. So we shall see.
Absolutely. Well, let's see if he can make any sense of it. That's defence editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Fox, who's still with us. Yeah, technical field difficulties. I mean, you can imagine there are.
Who's in charge?
Well, yes, who is in charge?
This is the problem. The way that they've been fighting, let's start at that end, the remaining Hamas, they've been broken up into small groups, classic terrorist guerrilla fighting, guerrilla cells. So the way you survive as a cell is by being not too much in communication. Get the guns, get the food, get the hostages, possibly. I think we have to conclude that there is no central brain or central command that knows where they all are, which is really ominous. Now,
well, because that would mean the basic deal of the ceasefire and how many hostages are going to be released when is nonsense.
Well, the problem is the deal, as we were saying earlier when we came on air, is that the politics has been done from Qatar by the political leadership there. We know there's always been a certain amount of communication. Now, as of the last week, we've had this rumour, of course, totally unconfirmed, that Yahya Sinwar's brother, the dead leader who'd set a militant Hamas on a suicide course in every sense, is rebuilding the fighting movement. But yet nobody really seems to know where he is. He's in Gaza, Mohammed Sinwar, for example. So you've got problems like that. And overall, the question for Benjamin Netanyahu and his commanders is, do you invest in chaos? Chaos keeps Hamas divided, or are you going to have to do something to give some sort of order? Because we know among the refugees there's no order at the moment. The mafias, as they call them, which is a very polite term for real out-and-out bandit gangsters, have been robbing a lot of aid going in. And sorry, there is a precedent in this that they're linked up to crime in Israel as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's chaotic.
It is chaotic.
And what we're expecting today may be unrealistic in that case.
Yes. And
because we're expecting some sort of order to come out of total chaos.
There's a big issue behind this, which we haven't mentioned, and the more liberal press, the more secular press in Israel is now really concerned about, which is the state of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, which is largely a citizen army, highly professional. Look, if the fighting goes on, are you going to tell young men and women you've got to go back in to this ghastly, very frightening sort of fighting? You know, is that civilian? Is that a poor mama or whatever? Or is there somebody behind them? What happens when I go through that next heap of rubble? And certainly Haaretz had a very, very long report last weekend about morale in the IDF, psychological morale. So this is the thing that really has to be addressed. And Israel's allies and also the most concerned Arab powers, and we've mentioned Qatar, and Qatar's a whole thing, and it's worth going to in itself because it's the repository of the ideology of Hamas, therefore the Muslim Brotherhood, and that's where they have strength across the Muslim world. But it's Egypt, it's Saudi Arabia and the UAE that they have to get interested in this, and they've got to, and they hate doing this. They don't like Hamas. These regimes feel threatened by it. They've got to grip them.
Look, there's less than 2 minutes until the deadline, so we can sort of assume it's
gone.
It's not going to happen.
No, it's not. For sure, Stephen, that's gone.
Right.
Yes.
So
and whether it's a matter of hours or a matter of days, or this year, next year, sometime, never.
Well, so the question remains then with this, doesn't it? Is it because the deadline is missed, does that then give power to the elbow of those people within the Knesset, within the Israeli cabinet, who have been dead opposed to this? It's not been an easy walk over the line for Netanyahu to get this through in the first place. Could this just throw the whole thing out, the baby with the bathwater?
I think not. because we were talking about demonstrations, but there have been very big peace demonstrations in Israel, and the settler movement, though powerful, I use that as an umbrella because Smotrich, you have to name three, Ben-Gvir and Levine, the Justice Minister, they are of small parties. And at least one of them, in the way things look in the opinion polls, if there was a general election, and I think, by the way, Israel will have to have a general election, whatever is being said, within this calendar year of 2025, one of those may not get back in at all. So they're a powerful minority. But it's what the majority want that is really so difficult. And to get it over the line through the Knesset, that is through the parliament, it's pretty clear that Netanyahu also needed the opposition to come in on side. And Yair Lapid, the leader of the most prominent, the new prominent leader of the opposition, said yes, he will back it. That will annoy the people on the right. And it's not, throwing teddies out of prams we're talking about. This is life and death. It is actually about what kind of state Israel is going to emerge as at the end of this, assuming we're going to come to the end in my lifetime.
Well, look, it's 6:30 now. And as far as we know, nothing has happened. And whilst that's incredibly politically important, you have to remember that there were going to be 3 hostages released today.
The 3 soldiers, yes, probably.
Yeah, and they have families. They're human beings.
Yep.
And those 3 families, or probably all of the people who've been campaigning for their release for so long now, will be distraught because they have no idea what's going to happen now.
Yeah, and thank you very much for returning us to the basics of real journalism. I'm sorry, and I do slightly the pointy-headed analysis stuff, but keep it local, keep it human, which is the way we all were trained in journalism. And it is the humanity in this that is so worrying. Yes, we can have the boasts, the claims, and whatever, and these big, powerful men, and it's largely men that have been doing the talking. But it's what happens in society, what happens in... Because Israel, as I said, is based on a citizen army, the citizenry of the state, however much those that we've mentioned of the settler movement want to turn it into a theocratic state. It's the bulk of people, the people, who will be a school teacher one day and then have to go to the colours and go into Gaza or go into Lebanon or go onto the West Bank, the following week. I think that's the thing where Trump is so strong. Trump does not like perpetual war. He doesn't like what the famous phrase of Dexter Filkins, these great American correspondents, called the never-ending wars. Trump is most firmly, he's got a much better record on it, too, than Obama or Biden had. And up with this, to quote another famous autocrat, no, he isn't, Winston Churchill, up with this, I think, for very good reasons, Donald Trump will not put.
Yeah, because he was very proud. I mean, he's been boasting again and again about how there were no wars during his first presidency. And he certainly doesn't want to start his second with a war, does he?
We're just hearing, Robert, that the Israeli military spokesperson is going to give a statement to reporters shortly. It's going to be interesting what he can actually say.
I think he'd just say, we've hit the pause button.
Is that literally it, rather than any sort of step forward?
Yes, Stephen, I don't think he can say cancellation. But certainly, as of the last 2 or 3 hours, it's looking pretty bleak. There are not too many moves towards progress that they can make. And meanwhile, they've got a flow of refugees or internally displaced, to be technically correct, are pushing to get back into northern Gaza with nobody to police them.
Can I ask, how is this likely to go down with ordinary Gazans? Because we obviously can't forget them in all of this. I mean, the death toll's been horrendous, of which a large proportion have been innocent Gazans. And yet this problem is, I mean, by their own admission, it would seem, a Hamas issue.
Yeah,
that has caused.
And Hamas again.
So will that
Hamas again has left them high and dry, very dry, because what they want and they've been allocated, they want those 600 trucks of aid. Sorry, here we go. Sorry.
Yeah, Daniel Hagari.
But I don't know whether we can...
No, it's in Hebrew, unfortunately.
We'll wait for a translation.
They very often give a statement in Hebrew and then in English, don't they, Robert? So,
Yeah. Can we get a translation?
well, they might do it again. Yeah. So we'll, just as we wait for him to hopefully switch into English, it is going to be... The problem that you've got from Israel's perspective is that a lot of Gazans are Hamas supporting, aren't they, at the moment?
Well, because they haven't known anything else.
Well, yeah.
That's the point, because you've had the attack again from Israel on UNRWA, claiming that UNRWA schools train Hamas people because Hamas people come out of their schools. Absolutely true, because there are almost no other schools. This is the thing. It's a sort of... I don't know, it's the opposite of a self-licking lollipop.
We'll cross to his sound as soon as we get the fact that he will then probably be speaking in English. But I know that part of the ceasefire deal was that they would release names of hostages 24 hours before they released the hostages.
So they haven't done that.
So we haven't even got that. And I think particularly of the family of the last the British hostage. And again, they must be going through torture at the moment, again, as if they haven't gone through enough of this sort of awful dangling the message of hope.
Oh, he's taking questions in Hebrew,
Is he taking
questions?
Yes,
he does seem to be taking questions, but...
We'll be finding out what he's saying as soon as we possibly.
We've got people monitoring it to see if we get anything in English and all this one. But it's no. There's been an absolute failure, which, as you say, does seem to suggest this disjunct between the political leadership and what's going on the ground.
Yes. Oh, but that's the point. I mean, as you said, we talk about the casualty figures, and they're pretty high, and they come from, in inverted commas, the Hamas medical authority. Well, it's the only authority turning out these figures. And this is the problem. The neighbours that really have to help, principally Egypt, they really don't want to get involved with Hamas. They see Hamas as a huge problem. And the last time, and it was a very similar deal last May to the one on the table now, it broke down because of this question of the Philadelphia corridor, which is the band across the Egypt-Gaza border, and Israel said we're no way prepared to abandon that altogether at the moment.
Can I ask, what are the global implications for this? Because we keep talking about Trump, obviously, but obviously we had pro-Palestine protests in London yesterday with a number of people, 77 people arrested. I mean, this does have a global impact, doesn't it?
It does. Well, it's actually moved the Israel-Palestine issue back centre stage, which actually it wasn't, even at the time for, the opening 2 years of the Ukraine war. We were looking elsewhere. And that's why who was actually behind it, the Houthi element of really causing damage to global shipping, was to bring it back onto the stage. And as I was saying, the principal Arab powers, namely the one that really isn't speaking much but is absolutely vital, probably the vital power, Saudi Arabia, would just like this to go away. They'd like some cooperation with Israel on the techno development. That's what they're after. But this is going to dominate, probably more than Ukraine could possibly. It's going to dominate the opening months of the Trump presidency, which he didn't. He was banking it wouldn't.
Yeah.
OK, Robert, we're going to leave it there for now. We'll talk to you in just a minute, though, so
You can only
don't get out
imagine, can't you, the mayhem in the White House at the moment, or not the White House, the potential White House, because they will be trying...
It will be in the White House, they'll be talking. But that has been happening. Blinken and Sullivan will be talking to Rubio and...
in some way.
And
Do stay with us, Robert,
sure.
because obviously this is an ever-changing situation, and we'll be bringing you up to date throughout the morning, second by second. And as soon as we can find out the English translation of what the Israeli military leader has just said, we will bring it to you.
You say that and I can deliver. This is Daniel Hagari. So he was saying the military is fully ready for the implementation of the ceasefire and ready to respond if terms are broken by Hamas. So that's the threat, obviously, to start action again. They say Hamas is not meeting its demands, and as long as Hamas is not meeting its demands, Israel will continue to attack. So it's grim. Anyway, more analysis with Robert in a moment. I know it's a heck of a gear change.
But it's the housework.
It is the housework, and we do need to tell you about the Great British Giveaway, because we're down to the last couple of weeks now. £50,000 is up for grabs. If you want to enter, here's how.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Amazing. Just the best feeling ever.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
5 years ago today, Harry and Meghan shocked the world when they announced that they were stepping back from royal life in what has since been dubbed Megxit. Many royal experts thought the future of the royal family was in doubt after the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's bombshell Oprah Winfrey interview, their scornful Netflix documentary, and Harry's autobiography Spare, that took aim at William and Catherine. Pleased to be joined now by entertainment and royal journalist Sarah Louise Robertson. Sarah, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show. So, Megxit, 5 years on, how's it gone for them?
It couldn't have gone any worse. I remember, as you pointed out there, Patrick, 5 years ago, one senior courtier called this move a declaration of war on the royal family. Well, this is a war that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry have lost. They are the losers in this whole sordid affair. And the royal family have come out stronger, more unified and better than ever. You know, she had it all in her hands to play with. It was all there to play with. She had the HRH title. She could have gone on to do wonderful things. And what's she now? A reality star. She's not even a working actress anymore. This new cookery show, Netflix have put it in the reality side of their categories. What a come down that is. We don't see them together in public anymore. She's doing her thing. She's going down the avenue of reality TV. And Harry's trying, I think, to do some of his charity work.
I still think that if he held his hands up and some things happened, that maybe the British public would.
He'd have to beg his brother. He'd have to beg his brother. The sticking point here is Prince William. Charles, yes, misses his son. I will say that again. He does.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This January, history will be made again.
Join GB News as we bring you full coverage of Donald Trump's presidential inauguration.
From the swearing-in ceremony to the celebrations, we'll be there to capture every moment that shapes the next chapter of world politics.
The best guests, live updates and unparalleled insight as Donald Trump becomes the 47th President of the United States. The inauguration tomorrow from 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news this morning is that the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas has not gone ahead. It's not happened, due to start 13 minutes ago. and it's not happened. The Israeli army spokesman has said the Israeli military is fully ready for the implementation of the ceasefire, but also ready to respond if terms are broken by Hamas. That is because this list of the 33 hostages due to be released in this first phase has not been brought forward. Robert Fox is still here. Robert, where do you see this now?
Well, it's Daniel Regev, the spokesman's statement, was stating the blindingly obvious, that it hadn't gone ahead and it was something and nothing. But the something is very important. And he was saying that the Israeli Defense Forces are standing by to implement, but also to take further action. But that raises another question, which is coming from the back of my mind to the front of my mind, is what can the Israeli Defense Forces and intelligence services like Shin Bet and Unit 8200, which is the one I keep on insisting, which is the electronic surveillance unit, what are they seeing and hearing, and what can't they see and hear? And I think that that's why in the era of the drone, you now get any footage from Gaza, a live broadcast, and from Ukraine, and you hear the buzz of the drone. But the drone is not quite the all-singing, all-dancing, all-capable thing that we have imagined it to be. Can't see into the minds of human beings, and it can't locate the key people that they now must locate. And it's because it's not the leadership, it's the operators on the ground.
Exactly. I mean, we're looking here, for those listening on the radio, we're just seeing a sort of overview of Gaza there. We were seeing some scenes from Khan Yunis a bit earlier. I mean, at the moment, you don't know how to interpret any of what you're seeing. What I wonder about is that what's interesting is that Hamas have seen the need to release a statement saying it's technical field difficulties. So they're not saying we're reneging on any deal, and they're not saying nothing. They are actually sort of almost making an excuse, which is at least keeping a lid on things, is it?
Splits. Is that what we're really looking at? Divisions within Hamas, which is very, very dangerous. And on that, and I'm not obsessed, basically, I want to go back to my previous thought and relate it to what you've just asked me. Israel has obviously got to insert, and obviously has them about, special forces. They've got to get, which is terribly dangerous and terribly risky, as we have discovered in the past. And it's where you've got to get human beings down there in the tunnels, in the bunkers, to find out who is sitting where and who is running what. And the problem is that you get the people with military political command, but who really rules the roost?
But when you
the gangsters.
But when you say splits, is that... I mean, is it a case of a lack of communication between the two, or is it some people saying, we don't want to implement this? I think this is pathetic, isn't it, for me to say this? It's a bit of both, I suspect. One can detect this. You will get, as we've been describing to an extent, the Israeli parts of the Israeli leadership that don't want this deal at all. I think you're getting the same on the other side. But, jihadi suicidism, if I can put it like that, seemed to be repressed or suppressed, particularly after what happened to Hezbollah in Lebanon and the awful shock and awe that has been used in Gaza. But it's still there somewhere, and it's still around. And again, that is the thing that upsets the powers that you really want to help Israel and America on this, namely the senior Arabs, Egypt, UAE, and Saudi Arabia.
Now, what happens now if nothing is happening with regard to releasing hostages or even releasing the names of the hostages that are expected to be released? Does the IDF think, right, nothing's happening, therefore military operations continue? We will continue besieging Gaza?
This is the implication barely disguised from Daniel Regev, the spokesman. And I think that they're on a timeline now. By noon, Greenwich Mean Time, if things go on like this, there may well be a resumption of operations,
What a massive
because Netanyahu must be under tremendous pressure now to call the whole thing off. From Smotrich, Ben-Gvir and their allies. But it's going to produce we can see it, divisions within the military as well. Yeah. I mean, they've got more than 500,000, probably totally in that small country, 1 million under arms, under training, or coming out of training at the moment. When you've got such a bulk of the country devoted to that, I think that they do have problems. Continuing wars are very, very difficult these days, as we're seeing, except in places where they just go into complete anarchy, like Sudan. But we now see that's the main thing on the Trump menu, continuing wars.
Yeah, OK. Robert, back to you in just a moment. But in the meantime, we're just going to have a quick look at the European forecast for you. Back in a sec.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello. Well, if it's some winter sunshine you're after across Europe, it's not all that promising. There's a lot of unsettled weather around. So there's heavy spells of rain across parts of Madeira and Spain and Portugal with this area of low pressure. Another area of low pressure across central Mediterranean, bringing outbreaks of rain, strong winds and even some mountain snow. Best of the sunshine really confined towards Eastern Europe, otherwise staying largely unsettled. Bye-bye.
Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Mr. Motivator, he joins us now. Mr. Motivator, a very happy new year to you. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. There you are, bright and early. So how are things? How can we all kick ourselves into shape?
By the end of January, most people have thrown their New Year's resolution out the window. I think what's important is that we make a change for life and we set ourselves small goals. And as we achieve those goals, then we reward ourselves. So in other words, you want to run 10K, you don't immediately get up and go run 10K, do you? You run between 2 lampposts and walk between 20. If you're not into running, don't choose running. If you're into dancing, that's great. If you're into any kind of movement, that is the way to keep yourself active, healthy, and also maintain your independence.
So, Derek, is the point that you keep it manageable and small enough that it's achievable?
Why don't we just find 4 exercises that you do for 1 minute each exercise, and you do that 4 times a day? Achievable, isn't it? That's only 4 minutes of exercise. And I guarantee at the end of the day, you'd have done 12 minutes, which is like your daily dozen. So there's your goal. I want to do a daily dozen of exercise lasting 1 minute each, right? And the first thing you could be doing is getting up from your chair, right? The moment you stand up, you incorporate so many muscles in your legs, right, that you're going to feel good, yes? So,
right, go on then. Get up off your chair, Adam. Show me how it's done.
Easy, come on.
Easy, yeah. Look at that.
Johan, the next thing I want you to do is to reach up real high. And if you bring it down, up
I'll
and
do
down.
that one.
Yeah.
For a minute, palms facing.
Oh, for a minute?
You're not flying a minute. That's better.
There we go.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Robert Fox is here talking us through what's going on in Israel. We're down to our last minute, Robert, here, but what do you see happening over the next couple of hours, if anything at all?
There'll be a lot of talking behind the scenes from Washington through to Tel Aviv, the military headquarters, and I think orders will be going forward. The contingency will be planned for, and I think, as we were saying, probing military operations will go on in Gaza. We're looking at headlines we were saying about refugees returning. I think they're going to reinforce their security corridors, like the Netzarim corridor, which cuts it in half. The more things go on, the more they stay the same.
And the big men on either side of the Atlantic or whatever, the men who can make decisions, I suppose, Netanyahu, Donald Trump, they're all awake, they'll be on phones, they'll be, in their situation rooms.
The situation rooms will be doing it, and I think actually with Blinken and both teams will be working together.
OK, Robert, thanks very much indeed. Back to you very, very shortly as we bring you the latest on this breaking news. In the meantime, quick look at the weather. Very good, Robert.
Thank you. Took a bit talking to the last second.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, we hold on to the cloudy theme and feeling cold with some rain for some in the west. So through this morning and the rest of the afternoon, then a cloudy picture across much of the UK with drizzle and perhaps even some snow grains just moving their way northwards into the Midlands. Further towards the north, as particularly across northern parts of Scotland, that's where we'll see the best of the sunshine through this afternoon, with rain gradually trying to approach from the west into Northern Ireland and western parts of Scotland. Otherwise, a cold feeling day, especially underneath this blanket of cloud, mildest temperatures further towards the west. As we go through Sunday evening and overnight, then we hold on to the clearest skies across northern and eastern parts of Scotland. Temperatures quickly falling away here, perhaps with a touch of frost. We'll start to see this weather front approach the Western Isles, bringing some rain, and for western parts of Northern Ireland as well, but colder across northern England and Wales. We may see some breaks in the cloud to give a touch of frost as well, but otherwise largely dry with a lot of cloud as we go Sunday night and into Monday morning. So as we go through the evening, then we've got this band of rain continuing to move its way slowly eastwards into western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, and eventually into northern England. Across much of England and Wales, though, hold on to a lot of cloud. Some clear spells that may allow temperatures to fall to give a touch of frost and some mist and fog patches. So another cold start to Monday morning, touch of frost in places, but again, a lot of cloud around. There will be some showers across northwestern parts of Scotland with some sunshine here and some rain just sinking into parts of northern Wales as well. But on the whole, largely a dry picture on Monday. Temperature just slightly up on what we've seen over the weekend, highs of 5 to 9 degrees. Bye-bye for now.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
People living with obesity are people. And they deserve the right for treatment and care as much as anyone else. What we need to understand is that obesity is a chronic condition, or a disease, as some people call it. It's not a choice. And this is the bit that people really struggle with, is that people think this is a lifestyle choice and people have done this to themselves. What we now know is the science and the evidence shows us that this isn't a choice. People have genetic predispositions for living with obesity. What we need to do is be a bit more compassionate and caring to people that live with obesity and support them to make healthier choices, not actually just discriminate and tell them that they're doing something wrong when, if I had asthma, for instance, you wouldn't be saying the same thing to me there. But then it's exactly the same.
Usually if you're going for an operation of some some form or other. There'll be maybe often there is a criteria. So my mother, she had a knee operation. They wanted to make sure her blood pressure was right and all these things. This is, I mean, to hear somebody say that obesity isn't a choice just because you've got genetic predisposition to it, it's just exactly why people seem to be legitimizing being overweight. Ozempic has proved that people are overweight because they eat too much, because Ozempic tells you to stop eating. It makes you think that you've eaten and makes you feel full, so you don't eat. You may be predisposed to anything, but you also have a large percentage of responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. So absolutely, it is in the patient's best interests, because if you're overweight, it'll take you longer to heal. You're more likely to have complications, the same if you smoke, and also the outcomes are usually better. So for a smoker, if you quit, say, 4 weeks before surgery, your 25%, your risk is lower of respiratory complications. So this is literally, of course, it's discriminatory, because you have to decide, you have to prioritise the people that are likely to survive the operations.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news this morning as the Israel-Hamas ceasefire is delayed.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu throws plans into chaos at the 11th hour.
Well, could this all dash the hopes of the family of the last remaining British hostage who had appeared to be very close to freedom?
History will remember this day. Donald Trump shrugs off the protests as he arrives in Washington for tomorrow's inauguration.
It's a happy birthday today to the Duchess of Edinburgh, who turns 60. We'll reflect on her life as a royal.
Heartbreak in Melbourne for Britain's Jack Draper. He's retired from his fourth-round clash with Carlos Alcaraz at the Australian Open with a hip injury. He was 2 sets down. Meanwhile, in the Premier League, Liverpool strengthened their lead at the top, and Manchester United planned tributes to the late, great Dennis Law.
Will you see any sunshine today, or will you be stuck underneath the gloomy skies? I'll have all of the latest in the forecast coming up.
It's just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Well, the breaking news this morning, and the ceasefire, which was due to come into force between Israel and Hamas 6:30 UK time this morning, has been delayed.
And thus, Benjamin Netanyahu has said that he will not go ahead with it unless Hamas releases the names of all 33 hostages that it plans to free in the first phase. That was part of the deal of the ceasefire.
6-week phase, so 6 weeks to release 33 people. They said they don't know who they are yet. It was hoped that the last British hostage, Emily Damari, would be on that list. Of course, her family and the families of all those hostages now left wondering what on earth is going on.
A big explosion seems to just have happened.
Quite where that is. Robert Fox is here, the defence editor at the Evening Standard. Quite where in Gaza that is, I don't know. But is this a sign that Israel has lost patience now?
Yes, I think so. I think we're on pause for today.
But that's not pause, is it? That's action.
Yeah, they obviously saw something moving, but we don't know who did it, where and when, and it may just be ordnance being blown up by either side. Let's wait on that one. Netanyahu will certainly have a meeting of his cabinet, and by the end of the day, gosh, it will be hours hence, we will get a plan, because I think that they must now think, if they're having such difficulty in producing the list of 33, it isn't going to appear tonight. So where does this go? And so the different elements in the Netanyahu support will start manoeuvring. I think the hardliners will say, we told you this was rubbish anyway, we've just got to carry on.
This, I mean, watching that, we don't know what it is, a strike by Israel, we don't know, but it certainly signifies the fact that we've gone back to war, but that the hope of ceasefire has suddenly been overturned.
Exactly, but this is where one hopes that Israel is informing its allies or the principal capitals of the West as to what is going on. Because I think, as we've been saying about Trump, who's not a patient man anyway on this, to say, well, actually, we see another year of war out of this, possibly, will not be pleasing. And also our own administration, Britain, France, Germany, very much involved in the Middle East because we have a particular interest in countries like Cyprus, Jordan, bases in Cyprus. The Houthis going to up the ante. They'd still been firing missiles, and there was real hope that this thing could be brought to some kind of conclusion. But we're back to square one again. That is the real fear.
But what is interesting with this, slight as it might be, is that, I mean, this has been caused by a delay in Hamas releasing the list of those people who were due to be released over the next 6 weeks. Hamas, I mean, has admitted that is a problem on its part, technical difficulties in the field. It's just, what does that mean?
What Hamas, where, who's doing it, and who's in charge of the shop. That's the problem. They're still fighting. We know that. They haven't been destroyed, although as a military force they've been destroyed. They're now a guerrilla/terrorist force, and they seem to have legs there that they can go on, unfortunately. And this seems to be an admission by Hamas is, we're not going to help you in controlling the anarchy on the ground.
Was it naive of us? Was it too hopeful of us to actually expect something to happen today?
It's all very well to sit in North London in a studio and say that, you know, that it was all wishful thinking. But, of course, it is the mixture, you know, diplomats, military planners have to work between pessimism and optimism. And perhaps we did get a bit too carried away. But I was talking about, you know, the forecasts in the newspapers, particularly, you know, the really powerful ones like the New York Times, which used to have a strong interest, well, it does anyway, in the Middle East with strong connection. So many of the predictions have just gone wrong. I don't think we really understand what Hamas is now, because it's more or less like a network. It's like a spider. It's like it's something that has articulated limbs. It's almost like the octopus can lose a limb and then have another and grow another. We're looking at very different organisms. They're not predictable in the way that they were.
No central control.
That's the point.
Well, certainly within Gaza, they can't have anything, can they?
No,
because, I mean, you only have to look at what we know of Gaza at the moment.
And then it's the connection between Gaza and primarily Qatar, and that is the weakest link, it seems.
Robert, just to let you know, the Israeli military have just said that sirens are being sounded in communities near the Gaza Strip now. So, I mean, which would indicate
that's my thesis, that there's a militant element on the Palestinian side that doesn't want this and watch the Houthis.
Yeah.
Good
grief. I mean, this is the thing. It is whether it's that crucial question now as to whether this is something which can be salvaged over the next day or two, or whether we are going to see this as an excuse by some, like the Houthis, like, you know, the wider Middle East region, to actually say, right, let's get this reignited again.
That's where I think that the kind of team that Trump has put in, and the way it has talked to the Biden team, particularly Antony Blinken and Jake Sullivan, I think that they will up the ante and they will knock heads and they will get people around a table. And what can we really do? Because the one thing that we've been talking even in this past hour about is that people are reluctant to police this stew, this anarchy, this terrible patch of misery that is Gaza. No, I think that's the sort of thing that the kind of bullish personality like Trump can really say, now look, it's in your interest, Arab powers and others, and you, Israel, that you tranquilise this. Whatever Ben-Gvir and Smotrich say, actually very few people, I think, in Israel, but the real hardliners, almost, I won't use a pejorative, because they really want peace. They really do want peace. This was the level of demonstrations at the previous weekend. They really hoped that this was going to deliver.
You have to have peace because look what the last couple of years of war has done. It's just decimated communities.
And who's going to rebuild it?
And how on earth they expect families to begin the long trek home, as the newspapers are saying this morning. Home? Where's home? It's just every bit of infrastructure has been flattened.
It would cost trillions. It's not billions to rebuild.
Imagine how £50,000 in cash from us could make your new year go with a bang.
Hi, my name's Victoria. I won the Spring Great British giveaway. So the day we got the money in our bank account, everything just felt a lot lighter. I would say if you'd be thinking about entering, just enter.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Of civilians. It could well be something like that. I mean, the conspiracy theory would say that there are elements in the military forces that don't want it to happen anyway. But we know, unfortunately, again, this is an important effect of this whole campaign in Gaza. The IDF, in great chunks, has become very, very politicised. Of course, everybody, you have politicians and so on. You look at the ex-chiefs of staff who are now in frontline politics. But it has a political identity in itself. There's almost, it seems, Regev has alluded to it at times, an IDF party. And what do they want? Where are they going?
And how much will they listen to anything Netanyahu has to say?
That's going to be the interesting thing, yeah.
Isn't it an interesting situation, though, when
although he's been clever in always going to bases and talking to commanders on the ground, and he and his brother, of course, the famous brother who died in the Entebbe raid, he does have quite a military record himself. He was SF, Special Forces, and he has been good about it. He's a good politician. I mean, he really does know.
And a strong leader.
A strong leader. Keep in touch with the base, and he is in touch with that, and would be more than aware of what I've just said.
But incredibly hawkish. I mean, he's always been very, very hawkish. At a time when, as you say, Israel itself seems actually more divided. I mean, often these situations unify countries, and it seems to be divided.
Because one of the things that came up in the wings of this thing has been around for some time is the pressure from the settler element, particularly I think it's Ben-Gvir, that they want even further privileges for the ultra-Orthodox, the Haredim, and military service, because generally speaking they have had dispensations. They want tax breaks as well. And this was a tendency which really was beginning to occupy the political debate in Israel, as whereas you go, what kind of state, what kind of armed forces you want.
There'll be some people tuning in, and understandably so, because there's so much else going on affecting people in the UK at the moment, who will say, do we really care about this? Why does this matter to us?
Because it comes to our shores. It comes to our shores. It's one of these things. It's not only the elements in our society, and we talked earlier about how the Palestinian militant movement, or the support for a free Palestine has galvanised the radical left in this country, so it moves well outside even what Labour seems to be able to manage at the moment. You know, that it is very much on Starmer's doorstep. And it's a real test, actually, for the Starmer government, which is deeply interested in this, because there are members of the government who have relations that have served in the IDF, even if they're not on the reserve list or still. And so there is commitment. So I won't blather any further. Let's do the bottom line risk is that you have a resurgence of jihadism, terrorism, and it will come to this country.
OK.
Ooh.
Robert?
And much of Europe, too.
Well, yeah, OK, look, we're going to speak to you again in just a moment. But for now, thank you.
And I think we ought to have a look at the weather now. As I said, we've got housekeeping to do. And I know lots of people are in touch saying, do you really have to go to the weather and things like that? Yes, we do, because it's a service. Let's have a look and see how the weather is going to affect where you live. Here's Catherine Chalk.
I'd like to know more about the explosion.
Yeah.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, we hold on to the cloudy theme and feeling cold, with some rain for some in the west. So through this morning and the rest of the afternoon, then a cloudy picture across much of the UK, with drizzle and perhaps even some snow grains just moving their way northwards into the Midlands. Further towards the north, as particularly across northern parts of Scotland, that's where we'll see the best of the sunshine through this afternoon, with rain gradually trying to approach from the west into Northern Ireland and western parts of Scotland. Otherwise, a cold feeling day, especially underneath this blanket of cloud, mildest temperatures further towards the west. As we go through Sunday evening and overnight, then we hold on to the clearest skies across northern and eastern parts of Scotland. Temperatures quickly falling away here, perhaps with a touch of frost. We'll start to see this weather front approach the Western Isles, bringing some rain, and for western parts of Northern Ireland as well, but colder across northern England and Wales. We may see some breaks in the cloud to give a touch of frost as well, but otherwise largely dry with a lot of cloud as we go Sunday night and into Monday morning. So as we go through the evening, then we've got this band of rain continuing to move its way slowly eastwards into western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, and eventually into northern England. Across much of England and Wales, though, hold on to a lot of cloud. Some clear spells that may allow temperatures to fall to give a touch of frost and some mist and fog patches. So another cold start to Monday morning, touch of frost in places, but again, a lot of cloud around. There will be some showers across northwestern parts of Scotland with some sunshine here, and some rain just sinking into parts of northern Wales as well. But on the whole, largely a dry picture on Monday. Temperature just slightly up on what we've seen over the weekend, highs of 5 to 9 degrees. Bye-bye for now.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
If you want to cheer yourself up this morning, and heaven knows we all need it, how about £50,000 in your bank account by the end of this month? You could win that in our Great British Giveaway. Here's how you enter.
Imagine how £50,000 in cash from us could make your new year go with a bang.
Hi, my name's Victoria. I won the Spring Great British Giveaway. So the day we got the money in our bank account, everything just felt a lot lighter. I would say if you're thinking about entering, just enter.
For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
An absolute monster. It took Chloe and Sean Ing 90 minutes to reel in this gigantic 8-foot-long monster fish from Chigborough Fisheries in Essex. And upon weighing this enormous marine beast, it was found to have been 7 pounds heavier than the existing British record, a 143-pound catfish caught also in Essex. But as I understand it, you actually went for a Chinese meal when fate struck. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So I was fishing an area of Chigborough where you have to fish at a fair distance. So I cast my rods out and then we ordered a Chinese. And yeah, so I got the bite at about 10 to 8 at night. And then about 20 minutes into it, my phone started ringing, the Chinese guys at the gate with my delivery. So I had to send a couple of guys off to go and get it. And then, yeah, the fight, obviously, you can't just stop the fight to go and get your Chinese. So, yeah, the fight went on, for about an hour and a half in total. There's no net in the world that's big enough for this fish. So we had to send out, first of all, I sent out a mate, Alex. He went out there to go and basically use what we call a sling. So that's a safe apparatus that we use to take the fish out of the water. He then went and he turned around and he was like, we're going to need another sling. So then we sent out another friend with a sling, and these slings are 4 foot long each. So then we had the catfish wrapped up in 2 slings, and it was still slightly longer than that. And then we got to a point where we was like, now we've got to try and get it out of the water to photo, to weigh it, because obviously we knew then that it was possibly going to be a UK record.
GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And our breaking news today is about the Israel-Hamas ceasefire. Well, it's in jeopardy. Well, more than jeopardy, I would imagine. The deal has been stopped for now. The terms broken by Hamas.
The IDF spokesperson, though, Daniel Hagari, says Israel is ready to commence the ceasefire as long as Hamas releases the list of hostages. This was all part of the deal. Hamas, though, are claiming the list was held back due to technical field reasons.
Well, the ceasefire was meant to take place at 6:30 this morning, UK time. Benjamin Netanyahu says he won't go ahead with it unless that list of the 33 hostages is released. The 33 hostages that are meant to be released within the first phase of this deal, which is over the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, and it was hoped, of course, the last British hostage, Emily Damari, would be on that list. And now her family just don't know after this morning's failure to develop.
Defence editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Fox, is here. Is there a list, Robert?
That's the question. And I'm sure that's the question going from Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, the military headquarters Tel Aviv. Have you got a list? Do you know who the hostages are?
Are they alive?
Do you know where they are? Mm. Are they alive?
How do they even get to the point of saying they've got a ceasefire agreement without knowing the answer to that question?
Well, they were supposed to have produced the list 24 hours ago, and we're now nearly an hour into from when the ceasefire was supposed to have started. And I think the question we're now beginning to raise, is this a pause or is this a break? And that we're going to have to go back to the drawing board. And that must be the conversation between Netanyahu's headquarters and Trump. You know, forget about Biden's got about less than 24 hours, or 24 hours to go.
Yeah.
And they will be involved because they have been involved in this. But it's very interesting, and it's interesting, you know, we say how much instant news that we get. So far, we haven't got anything out of Qatar. Which is the political brain, in theory, of Hamas. And this is a major hitch. This can't be wished away, because they should have produced the list 24 hours ago.
Well, in fact, the Qatari leader, when he announced the ceasefire, he said, "This is make or break. This one. There's nothing else. We've done everything we can do." Which again casts a real shadow over what's just happening now.
The fact that Israel is striking now, it says that what it claims are targets, terror targets. What does that indicate?
That indicates the scepticism of the military commanders. They're obviously in a forward posture, but in other words, fighting mode. And I think that's one of the most ominous signs that we had, just to give the viewers, we had a major explosion about half an hour, 40 minutes into the ceasefire timetable, about 40 minutes, so it was coming up to 7 o'clock our time, just after. And the signs really are really not good. And we're seeing from Gaza itself just thousands of people just milling around, not knowing what to do.
I'm thinking so much, I mean, not just there, but in Britain, there are thousands of people who feel a very strong connection, probably have strong family connections to all of this, to hostages, to people who've already died there. And you think especially of the family of Emily Damari, who is the last British hostage we know of, her family on tenterhooks at the moment, hoping her name would be on this so-called list, which has never appeared. They don't really know if she's alive or dead, but cling on to the hope. And still, even though there's meant to be a ceasefire deal, still we don't know anything.
And this is the paradox. As you say, there are intimate links, particularly between the Jewish community and the Israelis, but also with Gaza and the Palestinians. Highly educated until this thing, in all the misery of Gaza, you know, the medical profession and so on, there were some highly trained doctors who'd come backwards and forwards to the National Health Service. So this is known. What worries me, though, in the information age is the passivity. The synagogues and so on are very well informed. They are engaged. But it's the Arab world. It just reminds me of I don't mean the Arab world in general. It's an aspect of Palestinian politics that I think it was the Belfast-born great foreign minister of Israel. I mean, he was a big figure. Abba Eban always used to say the Palestinians always manage, never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And it seems we're here again.
And which, again, I know we've touched on it a lot in the last hour and a half, but this idea that the political leadership of Hamas, which of course is who you have to deal with in order to try and negotiate a ceasefire.
There's not much else.
It seems to have little or no control or knowledge of what is happening on the ground.
This was the problem from the first. You know, when this whole campaign was launched by Yahya Sinwar and his supporters, whatever the political leadership, they were in the lead. And I think that has really been the big problem. And it's a huge problem, which puts Qatar in the middle of it. It's isolated Qatar, but Qatar has been the base. They've made rumblings and grumblings about shutting down Hamas there or whatever. And of course, we're talking about the purity of politics here, so-called, but there's a lot of money. There's a lot of racketeering involved in this. I mean, that's the thing. That is, you know, people the racketeers are making profits out of misery in Gaza at the moment. And that is also part of this very complicated picture.
And then you think of this, that in the next 24 hours, all sorts of things are going to happen, including the inauguration of a new president in America. And you wonder what on earth can be going on there.
Well, a lot will be going on, and one wonders what the Donald Trump script will look like in the end by tomorrow afternoon in his inauguration speech, in his inauguration statement. And he cannot avoid but make a very strong declaration of intent about this.
He has to, doesn't he?
Because he said this,
He will rain all hell on them.
But he also wants to do it, I mean, I don't want to say it's a minor point, because he wants to send a very clear message to Zelensky and Putin as well. And if they say, well, Donald, you didn't do so well on the difficulty of Gaza, they're in synergy, they're in link. Things are more linked than we care to realise.
Who's he got? Who's he got to deal with this, Trump? Or will he be getting engaged in this himself? Will he be on the phone to Netanyahu?
Oh, he'll be on the phone to Netanyahu, but Rubio will be, the new Secretary of State. The special envoy, the envoy, putative envoy, Mike Huckabee, he'll get them all involved. Actually, we'll be tag teamed. He will say, look, we've got to do this. There will be a situation. There'll be 2 parallel situation rooms, outgoing, incoming, and they'll be hitting the.
You can't even imagine what that phone call must be like.
Yeah.
I mean, what does one man say to the other in this?
There'll be people talking to Peter Mandelson and Karen Pierce saying, look, Brits, you're experienced at this, as are the French. Get on the phones. Get talking to your people. Get involved. It's a real test for David Lammy as well, this.
Which is ironic, because we almost forget about that.
Yeah.
But diplomatically, what can be done? If the terms of the deal say you need the list and there isn't a list, what is there to argue?
I think that's what the Americans, these very tough guys, have to get out of Hamas. They've got to say, look here, come clean.
Yeah.
What do you know? What don't you know? The problem is that, you know, ever since it's now nearly 20 years that Hamas has been in charge, allegedly, democratically elected, you've been in charge and you haven't given up power. This is on you, and you've really got to do it. And it was thought, as we were coming up to this, that somehow Trump and his team had discovered a leverage to hold over Hamas and Israel, but particularly Hamas in that order, that somehow lack of resolve or shilly-shallying, whatever, that the Biden team really hadn't. But now he's in the same situation, and he will not like that.
But Hamas, they must know where some hostages are. They must, surely. I mean, wouldn't you say, release some?
I'd like to put you over there, because that's exactly the question they should be asking. Yeah. Your question. Yeah. What do you know?
Yeah.
What can you do? What don't you know? What can't you do?
Yeah.
But if they released some, if they just managed to contact 2 or 3, 4 or 5, and if they contacted them and released them today, at least that would be something, wouldn't it? And it would keep the idea.
Well, to get the momentum going.
Yeah, it would keep the idea of a ceasefire.
Well, that's where we are.
It's the known unknowns, as they say, isn't it? They need to get the
It's not the unknown unknowns, because a hell of a lot of this could have been gamed through, too. Yeah. I mean, that's what makes me slightly frustrated with this narrative that is being laid out.
Yeah.
Regev, the spokesman, almost alluded to it. We kind of half sort of maybe expected some of this. And, you know, have you got the contingency? Does Netanyahu really not want this and want to go on with the war? I don't think so. He looks to me like a man who is so decisive and incisive, quite divided in his counsels, because time isn't on his side. And I'm not talking about the political timetable, but we've had the health scare. The fact is, he was supposed to be recovering from his prostate removal, and he had to go back into cabinet, back into, you know, rallying the troops in the Knesset instead of convalescing.
Well, look, Robert, we're just going to leave it there for the time being, because as Robert mentioned, this plays into the Trump administration in a massive way. Trump wanted this sorted before tomorrow. Anyway, earlier we spoke to the deputy editor of The Spectator, Freddie Gray, who's in Washington for the inauguration.
I actually think they're being a little bit pathetic. Apparently, it is going to get a lot colder in the next few hours. But at the moment, it's not that bad. There is snow, but it's certainly bearable. But I gather Donald Trump was very concerned about the horses. He was worried that horses would freeze to death outside. And that was one of the main factors going on. Of course, there's a lot of chatter as well that the real reason is security. There's a great security threat. And that's actually why it's gone inside into the Capitol Rotunda. But I think the official line, which is probably true, is that they're expecting very cold weather.
And of course, I mean, usually they do the family walk up Pennsylvania Avenue, don't they? And even that's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. The schedule is that he will go to the Capital One Arena, which is a kind of sports center in central Washington, where there will be lots of Trump fans. And so he'll make the plan is he'll make an appearance there, but we don't quite know. I think for Trump people, the essential thing is the swearing-in ceremony will happen, and then at some point he may go via the Capital One Arena, or he may go straight to the White House and sign all these orders. Some people are saying 100 executive orders, which would be, I think, the most ever by a president on his first day.
Can I ask you about Lord Mandelson? Because there's lots of tittle-tattle around that Lord Mandelson, who's being, the number 10 want to be our man in Washington, that Trump may be seriously saying, I don't want him, I'm not going to have him.
Well, the funny thing is, I think Keir Starmer thought by getting Karen Pierce out and bringing in Mandelson, he was getting rid of someone that Trump wouldn't like and bringing in someone that they would. And actually, the opposite may be true. I think Karen Pierce, to her credit, had tried to build relations with the incoming administration. They'd been having conversations about various things. And then this change-up happens. And I think some of Trump's team, indeed Chrysler Zavita, who was the campaign manager of Trump's election campaign, said he didn't like it. He wasn't happy because they had been talking to Karen Pierce. And they're very interested in Britain. I mean, as you know, GB News' Nigel Farage knows, Team Trump, they talk a lot about Britain. I went to an event last night that was very transatlantic atmosphere, lots of major Trump world people there. And they want to talk about Britain a lot, and they're very concerned about Keir Starmer's government. They keep saying, what can we do? We wish we could do something to rid you of this terrible Labour government. And you think, well, you can't really interfere with our democracy, but nice of you to offer.
Freddie Gray there in Washington. It'd be fascinating to be a fly on the wall, wouldn't it, to understand exactly what is happening in the Trump camp at the moment. They want this over the line. It's looking increasingly like that just isn't going to happen.
It is. But that's what I was saying. It's so frustrating. You'd think somebody ought to be able to say, release some hostages today. That will at least make things look as though they're progressing.
Except you wonder if, and it's, a lot of people on gbnews.com/you'll say today have been saying, well, how many hostages are there still alive?
Well, we don't know.
I mean, there's a timetable, 33 in this first 6 weeks, a number after that, and then the bodies of those who have died released at the very end. Well, if those numbers don't add up, that would throw the whole deal into chaos.
Does Hamas know how many are alive, how many are dead? When they came up with the number of 33, did they actually know that there were 33?
I mean,
and what I don't
you would imagine
as well
so, but didn't
anyone saying we have a ceasefire deal if they don't know the detail.
But this seems to be the problem, doesn't it? That the deal has been done with the Hamas leadership who are in Qatar, and they don't really seem to know what is going on the ground. And it's not just Hamas now, as Robert was saying. It seems to be these other groups or splinter groups or whatever you want to call it, individual cells, who all seem to be doing their same thing and may well not agree with this deal.
But you cannot call it a ceasefire agreement then if the details aren't there.
Can't be delivered, yeah. No, I think that's a very valid point. Right, we're going to have lots of coverage on this. Keep right across all the latest detail for you. But in the meantime, let's have a look at the sport, should we, with Aidan. Good morning.
Good morning to you both.
What have you got for us?
I'm afraid I can't offer any more joy, I'm afraid, from the tennis.
No, this is terrible.
I know.
What's been going on?
Well, Jack Draper had, not great opportunity necessarily, because he was up against
Alcaraz,
who was a four-time Grand Slam winner, Wimbledon champion, etc. But yeah, fourth-round clash. down in Melbourne at the Australian Open. It's ended in disappointment, huge disappointment for Jack Draper, because after the second set he retired with a hip injury. So he lost the first set. He went to break down against Alcaraz. He got that break back, and then thrillingly Alcaraz took it in the last game of the first set. But Draper started to look uncomfortable in his serve after that, and he was pulling up a little bit after points. And about halfway through the second set, when he was trailing by 4-0, it looked pretty inevitable that he was going to pull up, and eventually he gave way at the end of the second set, trailing 6-1. So a massive disappointment for him, because nobody wants any match to end as a walkover. He did have those problems in September at the US Open, didn't he? Because he was suffering sickness on the court towards the end. It didn't cause do you remember that? Yeah, and then he said he's worked on his stamina.
Oh, what a shame.
He didn't want to be the player who is always injured. And I'm just worried that it might derail his career just slightly. I mean, he's still young, he still has plenty of years ahead of him, but it's something he has to get rid of. And hopefully this is a completely separate injury that's new, but nonetheless a huge disappointment.
He's not the new Raducanu, is he?
Well, I mean, we didn't mention Raducanu yesterday because...
Tell us what's been going on there.
Well, look, it looks as if she was starting this year in this tournament, particularly a Grand Slam, in strong fashion. She needed a strong year. We've mentioned that many times on this programme. But she suffered a record defeat against the celebrated Iga Swiatek, 6-1, 6-love, and she cut a very forlorn figure, a chastened figure, as she left the court in Melbourne, and a huge disappointment for her, of course.
What are people saying about her play? What went wrong?
I don't necessarily think it was anything that went wrong. I mean, she just doesn't look as confident to me as... I mean, I'm comparing to 4 years ago. Maybe we need to move on from that and accept that was one outstanding achievement, but things have just moved on from then. She's had injuries, she's had issues with personnel, coaching, the changing of her staff, etc. And maybe it's a new era for Emma Raducanu, and she has to try and restore herself to that level. I'm not sure it's that easy when you've not been at it for 4 years, coming up for 4 years, and so.
The trouble is, she set herself such a high.
Yeah, when you're that young, when you're that young. And now Boris Becker did that, but he was able to sustain it because he followed it up and backed it up. And I don't think it was a flash in the pan. You can't go through as a qualifier and not drop a set and win a tournament like that on hard court in America. It was absolutely astonishing, and to not do anything since. She's literally done nothing since then, and I find it quite as a drop off. I find it quite extraordinary, I really do.
Yeah. Can we have a look at the Premier League yesterday?
Yes, of course.
The Liverpool match was something.
Yes, it was. They left it late, and there were just moments in title races, Stephen, where I just feel that something moved yesterday. Arsenal had a huge opportunity after Liverpool's win at Brentford. They left it late. Brentford have a good home record. Liverpool scored 2 goals from Darwin Núñez to win there. So that strengthened their lead at the top of the Premier League. So Arsenal, over to them later in the evening. They faced Aston Villa at the Emirates. And they were 2-0 up. Looked as if they were cruising in the second half, and then conceded 2 goals to leave them with a 2-2 result and 2 points dropped against Liverpool. And I just wonder whether, if you're not taking opportunities to keep pace with your rivals, sooner or later Liverpool will show they have their mettle to see through the job of winning the title, their second one in 35 years. I want to give a mention to Bournemouth, though, because I love this story, because they won 4-1 at Newcastle, and it was a 12:30 kick-off at Newcastle. So imagine those fans. Guess what time their coach had to leave?
Well, about 3 in the morning.
No, it started at this is official supporters coaches. Started in Weymouth at midnight. Then on to Dorchester at 12:30, Poole at 1:10, Branksome at 1:20, the Stadium at 2 a.m, and Ringwood at 2:10. They were rewarded with an astonishing performance. Newcastle were in sizzling form, and I think they'd won 8 games in a row, and Bournemouth absolutely swatted them aside by 4 goals to 1. Absolutely extraordinary.
Aren't they brilliant?
Yeah,
I tell you what, that's some dedication.
It is, though, isn't it?
Sort of thing.
It does.
Can we have a look today at what we're going to see? It's Man United against Brighton today. There's got to be tributes.
Without doubt, yeah. Look, they haven't had much time to plan it, even though they may have had a tip-off a day or so before what was going to happen. But their CEO laid a wreath yesterday on the forecourt of the club near the statue, Omar Barada. There's a book of condolence has been opened in the East Stand reception for today. They face Brighton at 2 o'clock. There'll be a wreath laid on the pitch before kick-off. There have been tributes from Alex Stepney, Paddy Crerand and Eric Cantona. There'll be a minute's applause, and the players and staff will wear black armbands. The under-18s team, the under-21s team and the women's team have all been in action this weekend. They'll all be wearing black armbands as well. And I think something more fulsome, given the passage of time, will be arranged at their next home game.
Yeah. Good.
That'll mean
Good.
something to his family.
Without doubt.
Will.
That'll be there.
All right, Aidan, we'll see you later on. Thank you.
OK. Shall we have a look at what the weather's like in some of the top European holiday destinations? You can only dream.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Well, if it's some winter sunshine you're after across Europe, it's not all that promising. There's a lot of unsettled weather around. So there's heavy spells of rain across parts of Madeira and Spain and Portugal with this area of low pressure. Another area of low pressure across central Mediterranean, bringing outbreaks of rain, strong winds and even some mountain snow. Best of the sunshine really confined towards Eastern Europe, otherwise staying largely unsettled. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Lisa, you got in touch with me and you flagged this survey because you were concerned as a parent that your child had been given this to fill out.
Yeah, I mean, my daughter came home from school. She was very confused. She was asking why somebody would want to hurt themselves if they were feeling sad or worried about something. So that led to a conversation that we had, and I actually phoned the school and asked them to send me the survey, which with a lot of pushing, they eventually did send me the survey. And when I read through it, I was just completely shocked at the content. The survey says when I'm feeling worried that maybe I should try cutting or harming myself, because it's in the survey, so that must be an option. I've tried everything else, so why not try this?
It is astonishing that some of these are young children who are perhaps being introduced to these, these abuses for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a list of 17 different types of drugs, some of which I've actually never heard of myself. I mean, the wording on here is, have you ever got high from taking drugs? I mean...
And we know that some of these behaviours, self-harm, gender dysphoria, taking drugs, are psychologically contagious. Children do them because they see other children do them, or they find out about them from the internet or from surveys like this. So the idea that this is just information gathering and won't go any further than that is ridiculous. There was a similar survey in Scotland, I think, about 3 years ago, where children the same age, 11, 12, 13, were asked about their sex lives. How many times have you had sex in the last year? How did you have sex? Did you use contraception? Totally normalising underage sex. So the idea that children are just mini adults and we can confront them with all the same kind of ideas and dilemmas that adults have to face is just ridiculous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Right, let's have a look at the papers for you this morning and what's making the news in general, of course, with what's going on in Israel. Radio and TV presenter Alex Dyke and the writer and journalist Emma Wolfe are here. Good to see you both this morning. Can we have a look? Can we tie this in with Trump a little bit? Alex, I know you've been looking at... The Mail's got stuff on Trump ahead of the inauguration tomorrow. However, what's happening in the Middle East is obviously going to be playing very heavily on Trump and his team today.
Yes, absolutely. And, of course, he wanted this all tidied up before tomorrow, didn't he? Well, members of Donald Trump's White House team are now helping Nigel Farage. in a bid to become the Prime Minister. And this is revenge time. I mean, this is awful for Keir Starmer. Once again, I think not really reading the room that well after all the negative press on grooming gangs and the Chagos Islands and the winter fuel allowance. Now he's going to be humiliated by Trump, who's doing his best to do a deal with Nigel Farage, or that's the way it looks. And apparently one of Trump's allies in Washington has said that also Keir Starmer may have to go to the back of the queue before he gets his audience with Trump at the White House. So very, very humiliating.
Because Theresa May was first.
Bear in mind, she met him a few days after the inauguration last time around.
But then was criticised for it.
Exactly. You can't win.
You can't win.
No, you can't win.
But it looks like for Keir Starmer, this could be another humiliating episode and just a PR disaster, really.
Or is it? I mean, some people interpret it as a disaster. He just sort of seems to just keep going through it. Maybe it's just depends how you interpret it.
I'd like to know what his people are saying. I'd like to know what his PR team are saying to him, because I don't know. I think this looks bad, don't you?
No, it looks terrible.
Yeah.
It looks terrible, but I just thought...
But maybe he doesn't care. I think Starmer's just done so... I mean, it's almost insignificant. It is. It doesn't look good at all, and he will be humiliated. And it seems as though he's done so much damage already to himself with his government, with his cabinet for the last 6 months, that it almost appears that he doesn't care or isn't listening or isn't responding to the public mood.
It's interesting as well because Rachel Reeves is in Davos, and apparently as a leading figure.
Just back from China.
Yeah, that's right. She would have expected a space for her to make a speech, and she hasn't been given a slot to make a speech.
Really?
Yeah.
It really is baffling who is making these decisions.
Yeah.
And, and also, when the going gets hot, they do just seem to jet off to somewhere else, to not be in Britain when all of this is going on. Starmer and Reeves, both of them, actually.
Maybe do you think they're doing it deliberately? Get out of the heat.
Starmer spent a significant amount of the first 6 months abroad.
Aren't they calling him not here, Keir?
Yes.
They are. I don't know if other people who have been in history have been away as much and we just haven't noticed, or it hasn't mattered as much.
Judith Chalmers.
Judith Chalmers, indeed.
Yes.
Indeed. To be fair,
Prime Minister.
she was away a lot. That's a fair point. Emma, in the Times.
Yeah.
I hate to be overly critical of our youth. But now it's looking like a third of pupils are getting extra time in exams.
Well, I don't think you're being
Why?
critical of our youth. Exactly. I think we should look closely at what schools are doing, whether schools are gaming the system, because that is the suggestion, but also what parents are doing. So this is a report in the Times, a big report, confirming what a lot of us parents know, which is that a third of pupils, that's up from a quarter a decade ago, are now getting this extra time where you get 25% extra to deal with your exams. So, and this is actually the growth is more marked in private schools, 42% more in private schools and 27% more in state schools. But it does raise real questions. A lot of educational money, budgetary resources are now being diverted to special needs, and those can include cognitive needs, dyslexia, communication and interaction needs, autism spectrum disorders, sensory, physical, social, emotional and mental emotional needs. So that is a huge spectrum of children who may have, all the challenges that we had with our own children, that we may have had growing up, that we knew that our classmates had. Different children are different. They're all individuals. The idea that they are now being labelled, diagnosed, I think over-diagnosed, often over-medicated for a range of special educational needs. What are we putting in that kind of box?
But that list sounds to me like 75% of a normal class.
Of a normal child's upbringing, which is social challenges, emotional stuff,
But maybe the argument would be that things are getting worse, but perhaps they're getting worse because of things like social media and the fact that parents aren't doing enough
exactly
in all of this.
But aren't exams also designed? Maybe they're not designed, but isn't the idea kind of that they, for the first time ever, they're giving you a little bit of pressure as a young adult? So if you just keep lengthening these times, Mind you, I'm sure there's some real worthy cases.
No, that's not true. I'm sorry, giving you a lot of pressure. You remember tests and exams at school. It was a stressful time. It was a stressful time. It's like a job interview or a first date.
That's what I'm saying.
These are the challenges of life.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but if you just give a third of pupils extra time, well, it sort of makes a mockery of the entire system.
Yeah.
Why not just give everybody extra time?
Give everybody extra time. But,
just make exams longer.
But what I think we need to do is really hone in on those children who are genuinely troubled or have genuine learning difficulties or need genuine, different kinds of help.
But the word genuine there—that's the difficulty, isn't it? What is genuine and what is snowflake? And how do we know?
And it's not being unsympathetic.
Let's talk about something which really matters, Alex, which is in the Mail on Sunday.
Oh, I thought you meant me then.
No, too many takeaways could cause nasal irritation.
Yes. Now, is this a non-story? Research...
Yes.
Well, tell us what it is first.
Right, OK, so research has shown, Daily Mail today, page 21, that eating too many takeaways, or actually between 1 and 4 takeaways a week. 4 sounds like a lot of takeaways a week to me, personally. But anyway, it might give you around a 20% extra chance of having nasal irritation if you eat too many takeaways. So scientists think that fast food diets, such as pizzas and curries and Chinese takeaways, may be depriving your body of key vitamins. Now, the vitamins are vitamin D and vitamin E and precious minerals. So, I mean, it's January. Who hasn't got a runny nose in January anyway?
Well, exactly.
But anyway, is it really news that a curry gives you a runny nose?
But also hot, spicy food gives you a runny nose. And also, yes, if you eat junk fast food takeaways, your diet isn't going to be as good as if you cook from fresh with lots of fruit and vegetables.
This is true. But it's not going to put me off a pizza. It's Sunday. Pizza night.
Is it pizza night?
That's official, isn't it?
It's not.
Sunday's pizza day.
Not
all
every
round
week.
to Stevens.
Not every week, but every now and then, Sunday night is pizza night.
Does it get delivered by one of those funny
yeah.
little
Is it pizza delivery?
No, it doesn't come in the robots.
Oh, because he has robots.
We have robots who come around the house delivering stuff. No, we have an actual person delivering the pizza.
It's like a fridge on wheels with an aerial. It's just something out of a Disney movie.
Where does it come from?
Well, wherever you want.
Out of space.
The co-op normally, but that's another story. Right, we'll see you two later. Here's the weather. Oh yeah, there are.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, we hold on to the cloudy theme and feeling cold with some rain for some in the west. So through this morning and the rest of the afternoon then, a cloudy picture across much of the UK with drizzle and perhaps even some snow grains just moving their way northwards into the Midlands. Further towards the north, as particularly across northern parts of Scotland, that's where we'll see the best of the sunshine through this afternoon, with rain gradually trying to approach from the west into Northern Ireland and western parts of Scotland. Otherwise, a cold feeling day, especially underneath this blanket of cloud, mildest temperatures further towards the west. As we go through Sunday evening and overnight then, we hold on to the clearest skies across northern and eastern parts of Scotland. Temperatures quickly falling away here, perhaps with a touch of frost. We'll start to see this weather front approach the Western Isles, bringing some rain, and for western parts of Northern Ireland as well, but colder across northern England and Wales. We may see some breaks in the cloud to give a touch of frost as well, but otherwise largely dry with a lot of cloud as we go Sunday night and into Monday morning. So as we go through the evening then, we've got this band of rain continuing to move its way slowly eastwards into western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland and eventually into northern England. Across much of England and Wales though, hold on to a lot of cloud, some clear spells that may allow temperatures to fall to give a touch of frost and some mist and fog patches. So another cold start to Monday morning, touch of frost in places, but again, a lot of cloud around. There will be some showers across northwestern parts of Scotland with some sunshine here and some rain just sinking into parts of northern Wales as well. But on the whole, largely a dry picture on Monday. Temperature just slightly up on what we've seen over the weekend, highs of 5 to 9 degrees. Bye-bye for now.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Amazing. Just the best feeling ever.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Estelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This was thought to be a Ruskin. Ruskin was a very considerable polymath, an artist as well as many other things. So, do you know why it was submitted for reappraisal? Was there a bit of a suspicion that it had been misidentified?
No, as you say, it's a service that Christie's offer. You can submit an artwork that you have, so anyone can submit it and request an estimate, and then the auction house's appraisal service allows you space as well to describe it and ask for evaluation. And Christie's sort of looked at it behind the sheet of dirty old glass and recognised a sort of Turner-esque mood and feel and ambience about it. And because there was this close relationship between Ruskin and Turner, which is fascinating, we'll come on to that shortly, but they sort of felt, well, the brushstrokes are very strong, the line is very economic, and the colour of the palette seems to be rather Turner-esque. And then they called in a specialist paper historian who confirmed that actually the paper that was used was one that Turner favoured himself. So yes, it was originally considered to be by Ruskin, but then we discovered something more magnificent. And don't forget, what's really interesting, now it's for sale. The lucky buyer is not just buying a picture. The lucky buyer is buying a life story, a relationship that actually changed the course of art history because of the relationship between Ruskin and Turner themselves.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Breaking news today as the Israel-Hamas ceasefire is delayed.
Israel carries out strikes on Gaza, with reports suggesting at least 8 Palestinians have died.
That's as the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, demands the names of the hostages Hamas are due to release. They should have given that over 24 hours ago. Could the delay spell trouble for the last remaining Brit held captive?
History will remember this day. Donald Trump shrugs off the protests as he arrives in Washington for tomorrow's inauguration.
The Duchess of Edinburgh prepares to turn 60. We reflect on her life as a royal.
Heartbreak in Melbourne for Britain's Jack Draper. He's retired from his 4th round clash with Carlos Alcaraz at the Australian Open with a hip injury. He was 2 sets down. Meanwhile, in the Premier League, Liverpool strengthen their lead at the top, and Manchester United plan tributes to the late, great Dennis Law.
Do you see any sunshine today, or will you be stuck underneath the gloomy skies? I'll have all of the latest in the forecast coming up.
It's just gone 8 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Well, let's kick straight off with the main news this morning, and that ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, due to come into force 90 minutes ago, still hasn't. Israel alleging the terms were broken by Hamas.
Well, the IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari says Israel is still ready to commence the ceasefire, as long as Hamas shares the list of hostages that they will release as part of the first stage of the agreement.
Hamas claimed the list was held back because of technical field reasons. Now, amongst those hoping to be on this first tranche of people released was the last British hostage, Emily Damari. Her family, of course, as with many others this morning, are left grappling with this situation.
And so, since the ceasefire was meant to have started, sirens have been sounding across the Gaza Strip. That's according to the IDF. And at least 8 Palestinians have been killed. That's since the ceasefire was meant to have started, after the Israelis confirmed they'd struck terror targets, that's what they said, in northern and central Gaza.
Well, Defence Editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Fox, has been keeping across all of this for us this morning. Deaths already, Robert, in this. I mean, in some respects, it's not surprising, but I wonder if that in itself is going to cross a line for some of those on the Hamas side who wouldn't have been keen on this in the first place.
Probably not. I think that this may have been baked into the thing that it's very unlikely that it would go entirely smoothly, that this has been reckoned. But the fact is that the list of 33, which is absolutely crucial, by the way, to the opening, it was a fundamental part of the first of the 3 phases. The 6 weeks phase coming to a ceasefire, 33 hostages released, named, and also over 1,000, about 1,000 plus, Palestinian prisoners released from Israeli jails. And the thing that we have to do, we're an hour and a half into it, we have to suck our teeth and say, temporary hitch, or is this a derailing that a lot in Israel, a lot in command in Israel were really looking for? Because remember, 2 of the hardliners in the cabinet, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, but Ben-Gvir himself said that he would quit if Israel didn't go back to war to smash Hamas. We know that, but what we don't know is how Netanyahu got him to hang on. And so has he given him a deal that he really was going to throw over the apple cart after he'd got the maximum number of hostages out?
Well, I suppose
this is what's going on in Israel. This is a debate on the wires in Israel as we speak at the moment.
And at this stage, what is mystifying most people is why couldn't Hamas just come up with a list?
I think there are problems at home with Hamas. I think that it shows there is disarray. And what is so interesting is these pictures that we have, which are actual at the moment, that they've got gunmen on the street. Yeah. You would have thought they were supposed to be policing and helping poor, unfortunate refugees with very little food, very little shelter, to go back home, as they said that they wanted to, into northern Gaza, which is unknown territory. That almost is an unknown, really, what has gone on. And it seems to be in a state of anarchy.
I mean, this is, as you said, I mean, the problem is, and we're seeing pictures on the screen now of these gunmen piled onto cars. I mean, dozens and dozens of gunmen piled onto cars with their AKs or whatever they are. I mean, the problem here is, as is always the way in this situation, is it doesn't take much for this to properly tip over the apple cart again.
And that is a very obvious visual message. You know, the serious message here: we're still in charge. We can still take charge of the street. No, it's looking a pretty good mess, and it looks as if, as the clock ticks on, it's not going to get resolved in any satisfactory way before the inauguration.
Flash, which is, we've been told that Israel has now received names to be released on the first day. That's according to Israel's own TV channel 12. So they have received names.
They've got names at last.
Yes.
For today.
Yeah. You see, it's what you're both saying. It's incredible that, you know, that Hamas has a sophisticated political leadership, that they've been doing the negotiations in Qatar, that they hadn't gamed this through, that they had to get to the first phase. I think the problem is that it's looking at nobody really on the Hamas-Palestinian side is fully in charge of anything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, where would this leave us, though? If we had names for today, and then presumably more names would come forward for tomorrow or for a couple of days' time, or whatever. Is this enough?
No, there's got to be a fact on. There's got to be a fact on the ground, Stephen. They've got to release the 3 or 4 that they said they're going to release, including allegedly these 3 female soldiers. They've got to do something. They have got to show there is something behind their word. If that doesn't happen by midnight tonight, Israel time, which is 10 o'clock this evening in the UK, I think then there are serious questions about the good intentions of the Hamas negotiators.
But if they have at least given some names, doesn't that just sort of help for today? I mean, maybe this is going to have to be the way it's played out.
Yep,
drip, drip,
you've got to get some momentum going.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I'm intrigued as to, as we were saying earlier on, and understandably, the phone lines are going to be red hot between Trump and Netanyahu, or at least their 2 teams at the moment. What pressure is there that Washington can put on Gaza, on Hamas? Are there lines of communication there?
There will be, but I think they may be very tenuous. I doubt, well, we know that it's very unlikely they have direct eyeball-to-eyeball contact with the military command in Gaza, which is the problem.
Yeah.
And that's where you want some help. But there'll be somebody sitting in various offices in Qatar and saying, no, you do this. And there will be a lot of sloping of shoulders. Oh, well, you know, it's out of control. It's so difficult. Look what the Israelis have done, you know. This is the legacy of that. But the problem is that there's still the militant side on the Israeli side that we really haven't been tough enough in the eradication process. For Hamas, the thing that's popped up again has Netanyahu pledged to Ben-Gvir, particularly, and it seems to be he is the toughest of the trio of hardliners, that he'll fire the head of the IDF. This has been in the air for a long time, Herzl Halevi, and we're going to have a different approach. But as one of the mainstream papers has been pointing out this morning, your soundings of public opinion, and we've seen it on the streets, that a very large proportion, it's quite a high polling proportion, of Israelis really want peace. Don't want to go on with the war in Gaza.
Well, why would they? Losing their young.
Yeah. And open-ended. This thing that was supposed to be done in a year, max, it's going on and shows no resolution at all.
And involving more and more countries as well.
Yeah.
And more splinter groups.
Which
is, as you said before, very, very dangerous.
Yeah. Just to say, Robert, we're getting more word through that Ben-Gvir has resigned from government.
That is fascinating because, as of an hour ago, we still got the line that Netanyahu had persuaded him to stay on until the end, it's a long time, of phase 1, which is 6 weeks. So does Smotrich...
Again, who he was and what he was saying, which might...
Ben-Gvir is the toughest of the settler leaders. We have to get into murky waters here. He was a follower of the very radical right-wing Rabbi Meir Kahane, who was banned as a party leader back in the day in Israel. And Ben-Gvir is one who believes in the reoccupation with settlers of Gaza. He also believes in annexation of a lot of the West Bank and going to the end of, can we even bother to think about it now, of the 3-stage process, totally against any notion of a 2-state, in other words, a Palestinian state resolution to this.
But you see, what is interesting is if he's resigned... He's resigned now at a point when the ceasefire hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Is that an indication that perhaps...
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen at least in the... That's where, again, the Trump effect, that they've got to Hamas saying, you have got to produce something and you've got to get, as we were saying, the momentum going again.
So it's
fascinating.
It's a good sign.
Well, it's going to be... it's extremely difficult for Netanyahu, because what is Netanyahu going to do now? Is he going to try and keep the other right-wingers on board? Or is he going to say, throw in his lot with as I said, the extremely articulate leader of the opposition, Yair Lapid. He's brought in a relative moderate in Gideon Saar into the coalition. I think now foreign minister, it's changing quite a bit, to make it more centrist. Now, can he see his way through on that? But as I said, we have to watch Netanyahu very carefully, because I think we get the sense that he feels that time is against him now.
Yeah, is there a problem if the hardliners leave government? Is that a problem for Netanyahu? I mean, you were saying there's likely to be an election at some point this calendar year anyway, and if the polls are saying that the majority of Israelis want peace, is losing the hardliners a problem?
Yes, it is. Because what he must fear is that it goes to the street. And there's been a lot of violence on the West Bank, and there could be a lot more of that, and with problems, again, with the IDF, suspicions with some elements of collusion and so on. Now, it's a real test for Netanyahu. Who's in control now? I don't think he'll be talking about sacking the chief of the IDF, of the Israeli Defense Forces, very quickly.
Which
is what Ben-Gvir wanted, yeah.
God, isn't it fascinating?
It is.
But
Because
look, when I came into your studio an hour and 10 minutes ago. Look how much has shifted in that time. Yeah,
it's not just teetering on the edge. Is it? I mean, it's probably sort of back. It's back again.
But that's the problem with these leaders. I mean, they're thinking of their political survival as well as what the country wants, which is peace.
Yeah.
But not peace at any price.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're seen as soft.
But also the other thing, which I think is a mistake in the commentary very often, is that whatever history does, it doesn't go backwards. You can't go back to what was before. And that is the problem. And I think they're beginning to grasp that Gaza isn't going to go away. It isn't going to go away in a generation. And it's been there since, it's been a problem since Israel became a state, was stood up in 1948. And this continues. There are 2 million Gazans on not particularly favourable, environmentally speaking, territory. What are you going to do about it?
It's interesting because we're obviously talking about the concerns within Israel and the Israeli government. Because we know more about it, I guess, we can analyse it. It's very difficult to analyse what's going on the Hamas side when you say there is this disconnect between the political leadership based in Qatar, the guerrilla fighters, these sort of disorganised cells, it would seem, on the ground.
What is so interesting is that we have got very little inside track coverage and analysis of what is going on in the Hamas leadership. In a way, up until the events when you got Nasrallah killed and in Lebanon, we knew more about Hezbollah than we really know about the Hamas leadership. I mean, in the good old-fashioned days of the kind of print journalism I used to do in Italy, you would be doing what was called an organogram. You would have a diagram of who the players are and whether, and people would know them, would know the individuals. It was, you know, back in those days, people were forever trotting up to see Yasser Arafat, but they were spending days with him. So they saw how the team operated or didn't. We're getting, for my money anyway, so little of that now.
Why? They're just not...
They're very difficult to get into, and it is. And this cell thing, that the way Israel has been very successful, the Israeli forces, from a security perspective, they haven't been letting outside journalists, as we know, into the Gaza Strip. But we have to keep on doing it and going on.
We've seen a number of strikes today targeting terror targets since the ceasefire should have come into force. Reports that 8 Palestinians have been killed. The ceasefire is not yet in place, but we're seeing this action. Do you think the IDF has been told to stand down now or pull back?
Well, there are reports, but it's in the Liberal press that they had already started dismantling and pull back because they're under pressure. I mean, just from it's the least of things not in the headlines is that, you know, they've got a commitment up on the Lebanese border and in Lebanon they've got trouble in the West Bank. That, you know, that to have about 250,000, between 250,000 and 350,000 troops absolutely ready for action. It's a terrible strain. You can only keep troops like that state for a matter of weeks.
And incredibly expensive.
And very expensive. And I think that is the thing really must be worrying them at the moment. And under Herzl, it seems to me that they have been very well led. You know, the thing hasn't fallen apart, despite fighting, you know, ground wars on 3 fronts and, you know, that multi-dimensional wars on 5, 6 or 7 fronts, including the Houthis and Iran, and what may or may not be going on, which Israel deems to be threatening in Syria. Now, sorry, but I don't want to go on, because otherwise I could read the Middle East Gazetteer of places.
Yeah. It's just interesting there. I just want to touch on that point, because it's wondering where Trump is pushing the buttons here. And as Anne would say, quite rightly, it's so expensive to keep so many troops sort of ready for action on the line for a prolonged period of time. America's bankrolling an awful lot of that. Do you think he's threatening to turn off?
Well, I think that's what must have been said, because I think the bill, the armaments bill, and they're putting cutting-edge stuff, as I was saying, with the F-35s, and they're really
what, $100 billion a piece?
Yeah, and you know, that Trump really wanted to pull back from places, and it's not an enormous presence, but it's quite an expensive presence in places like Syria again. I think he realises he can't do that right away because the variables are so much, particularly, as I said, you know, the jihadi element, which we thought was going away.
And from Trump's perspective, it's a real test of his leadership qualities at the moment, isn't it?
I think it's still the art of the deal, because he's done so much, and I think that he will. Witkoff is terribly important in this. His special envoy, he will be in there talking to Netanyahu. Yeah.
OK, Robert, we're just going to leave it there for the time being as we analyse exactly what is going on. It is all happening minute by minute, but there is at least now this glimmer of hope that we could see that ceasefire implemented perhaps at some point today. It'd be a remarkable turnaround of events if it happens, but it looks like there is at least that glimmer of hope. As we keep an eye on that, let's have a check on the weather with Catherine.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, we hold on to the cloudy theme and feeling cold, with some rain for some in the west. So through this morning and the rest of the afternoon, then a cloudy picture across much of the UK, with drizzle and perhaps even some snow grains just moving their way northwards into the Midlands. Further towards the north, as particularly across northern parts of Scotland, that's where we'll see the best of the sunshine through this afternoon, with rain gradually trying to approach from the west into Northern Ireland and western parts of Scotland. Otherwise, a cold feeling day, especially underneath this blanket of cloud, mildest temperatures further towards the west. As we go through Sunday evening and overnight, then we hold on to the clearest skies across northern and eastern parts of Scotland. Temperatures quickly falling away here, perhaps with a touch of frost. We'll start to see this weather front approach the Western Isles, bringing some rain, and for western parts of Northern Ireland as well, but colder across northern England and Wales. We may see some breaks in the cloud to give a touch of frost as well, but otherwise largely dry with a lot of cloud as we go Sunday night and into Monday morning. So as we go through the evening, then we've got this band of rain continuing to move its way slowly eastwards into western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, and eventually into northern England. Across much of England and Wales, though, hold on to a lot of cloud. Some clear spells that may allow temperatures to fall to give a touch of frost and some mist and fog patches. So another cold start to Monday morning, touch of frost in places, but again, a lot of cloud around. There will be some showers across northwestern parts of Scotland with some sunshine here and some rain just sinking into parts of northern Wales as well. But on the whole, largely a dry picture on Monday. Temperature just slightly up on what we've seen over the weekend, highs of 5 to 9 degrees. Bye-bye for now.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Giveaway, you could have £50,000 in your bank account if you're lucky. This is how to take part.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Amazing. Just the best feeling ever.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's meant to be a weekend of celebration for Donald Trump ahead of the inauguration tomorrow. However, it's clearly turned into a day of phone bashing and really trying to get things sorted between Israel and Hamas. We're going to be getting the latest from Freddie Gray, who's in Washington, in just a moment.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
Aaron McLean, the goal machine here, used to play for Peterborough United. You bagged loads of goals for them back in the day. But I've got a bone to pick with you, young man. You scored at the City ground against Nottingham Forest for, was it Hull City?
For Hull City, yeah.
Why did you do that?
Well, that was my job, unfortunately. I must say, that was actually one of my favourite goals.
Was it really?
Because I remember, obviously, playing at the City ground, unbelievable stadium, historic.
It is great.
So, and we beat you 1-0.
OK, no need to rubbish it. These sports clubs, whether it's football or rugby or whatever, should offer two alternatives, either a professional footballer, or if you don't quite make it, you can still go and play football at a lower level, but have a career as well, maybe be an electrician or a plumber.
100%. You know, listen, I've had multiple conversations with various different people, whether it's the PFA or whether it's clubs. Even players who do have careers, you know, there's so many that don't make it and don't quite make it to the level or only play at a lower level. There's so many that do have long careers, but once you come to the end of that, you've spent, you know, for me, I spent 20 years as a professional footballer. Once I finished playing, what do you then do for the rest of your life? You know, at 35, once you retire, you still have to have a purpose in life. Yeah. But I'd almost be starting from ground zero. I'm fortunate that I went into coaching and then went into the media.
That's good.
But for every one of me, there's hundreds that don't. And I've got so many friends who, I've got to say, you know, have really, really struggled on the, you know, mental health side.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, because you go from, like, playing in stadiums, big stadiums, small stadiums, crowds, singing your name, and all that sort of stuff, the adulation, the buzz of winning games, and, you know, the downs of losing games, and you go from that to sort of nothing when you finish. I mean, that's a big come down there.
It's a huge come down.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This January, history will be made again. Join GB News as we bring you full coverage of Donald Trump's presidential inauguration.
From the swearing-in ceremony to the celebrations, we'll be there to capture every moment that shapes the next chapter of world politics.
With best guests, live updates and unparalleled insight as Donald Trump becomes the 47th President of the United States. The inauguration tomorrow from 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This January, history will be made again.
Join GB News as we bring you full coverage of Donald Trump's presidential inauguration.
From the swearing-in ceremony to the celebrations, we'll be there to capture every moment that shapes the next chapter of world politics.
With best guests, live updates and unparalleled insight as Donald Trump becomes the 47th President of the United States. The inauguration tomorrow from 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, Stephen was calling it phone bashing earlier, and that is exactly, presumably, what is going on at the moment between all sorts of leaders and their teams. Because you actually think of it, President-elect Donald Trump could actually be talking to Benjamin Netanyahu right now, as we speak, about the ceasefire delay, and you can only imagine who's shouting what to whom.
Yeah, but something's happened. Something's happened, so it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out during the course of the day. Anyway, is it going to put a dampener on the celebrations that they're having today?
Or is it going to put the cherry on the cake?
Well, it might well do if he gets it across the line again, but also the weather is going to be an issue tomorrow, as we know, for the inauguration itself. Earlier, we spoke to the deputy editor of The Spectator, Freddie Gray, who's in Washington.
I actually think they're being a little bit pathetic. Apparently, it is going to get a lot colder in the next few hours. But at the moment, it's not that bad. There is snow, but it's certainly bearable. But I gather Donald Trump was very concerned about the horses. He was worried that horses would freeze to death outside. And that was one of the main factors going on. Of course, there's a lot of chatter as well that the real reason is security. There's a great security threat. And that's actually why it's gone inside into the Capitol Rotunda. But I think the official line, which is probably true, is that they're expecting very cold weather.
And of course, I mean, usually they do the family walk up Pennsylvania Avenue, don't they? And even that's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. The schedule is that he will go to the Capital One Arena, which is a kind of sports center in central Washington, where there will be lots of Trump fans. And so he'll make the plan is he'll make an appearance there, but we don't quite know. I think for Trump people, the essential thing is the swearing-in ceremony will happen, and then at some point he may go via the Capital One Arena, or he may go straight to the White House and sign all these orders. Some people are saying 100 executive orders, which would be, I think, the most ever by a president on his first day.
Can I ask you about Lord Mandelson? Because there's lots of tittle-tattle around that Lord Mandelson, who's being, the number 10, want to be our man in Washington, that Trump may be seriously saying, I don't want him, I'm not going to have him.
Well, the funny thing is, I think Keir Starmer thought by getting Karen Pierce out and bringing in Mandelson, he was getting rid of someone that Trump wouldn't like and bringing in someone that they would. And actually, the opposite may be true. I think Karen Pierce, to her credit, had tried to build relations with the incoming administration. They'd been having conversations about various things. And then this change-up happens. And I think some of Trump's team, indeed Chrysler Zavita, who was the campaign manager of Trump's election campaign, said he didn't like it. He wasn't happy because they had been talking to Karen Pierce. And they're very interested in Britain. I mean, as you know, GB News' Nigel Farage knows, Team Trump, they talk a lot about Britain. I went to an event last night that was very transatlantic atmosphere, lots of major Trump world people there. And they want to talk about Britain a lot, and they're very concerned about Keir Starmer's government. They keep saying, what can we do? We wish we could do something to rid you of this terrible Labour government. And you think, well, you can't really interfere with our democracy, but nice of you to offer.
Good that Freddie meant.
All right. Robert Fox is still here because there's lots to work our way through, Robert. I mean, and the fact that it ties in with Trump so strongly, actually.
We think that Trump is about to or has been talking to Netanyahu about this hitch. And it's quite clear what you don't have to read his lips. Is this serious? Is it temporary? Is the whole thing off? Can you make it work? What is your game? And is it anything I can support? Not that Trump would ever speak in those terms. He'd be very firm about it. Well, we've got some names, it seems, doesn't it?
They haven't been released to the press yet, but there are 3 names now that have been released.
And I speculate, and I could be proved entirely wrong, it's the 3 of the women soldiers.
Yeah. And those are the ones we were expecting today.
And, you know, it's not a climb down because I think they were unarmed. They were trackers and observers, and thereby there is a backstory because some of those people were warning that something was up, and it's one of the big mysteries. And down the line, it comes across Netanyahu's desk. I mean, who knew what? Why didn't you know? And what were your relations with Hamas over the past 10 years?
Yeah, it was an extraordinary intelligence failure, wasn't it? One way or another. Look, in terms of this, I mean, if this ceasefire is reinstated in some form or other with the release of 3 hostages, and we don't know for sure that will be the case, but we still are now left without the full list, and the big question is, do they know who they've got? Do they know if they're still alive? How do they organise this moving forward?
I'm going to be a politician, I'm sorry, Stephen, and not answer your question with another question.
OK.
Because there's another bit of breaking news that we've got to put into the whole mix, which is the resignation of Itamar Ben-Gvir, the hardline security minister, who had done a deal with Netanyahu, said, at least I will stay on for the first phase of this agreement, which, by the way, viewers, is 6 weeks. The fact that he decided to go now is quite significant. So I speculate that Ben-Gvir knows, now I'm going to answer your question, that something is in motion. And I think Netanyahu's managed to get it to Hamas, use it or lose it. If you drop the ball here, it's off forever, as we heard from the Qatar Prime Minister back in the week, that this really is make or break. It is quite clear Qatar has done a lot to host Hamas and its political leadership, and I think that they were putting writing on the wall because there had been talks that they would kick them out as well. It is this unknown of Hamas and what it can deliver. Hamas hasn't done itself any favours at all as a serious negotiator by putting the gunmen on the street, again, which we have to tell viewers about, which is what has happened since the deadline came up. It's exactly 2 hours and 5 minutes ago, and then suddenly we get pictures of people, they're called tacticals, filling Toyota or whatever pickup trucks with gunmen with masks, waving guns in the air, not paying too much attention to the civilian population that they're supposed to be protecting.
Do you think that's what precipitated the apparent strikes from Israel? Which apparently caused 8 dead, or which happened first, I suppose?
No, it was, I think, happening simultaneously because it was a drone strike, allegedly. By the way, that has happened since the initial deadline, and we were told by Daniel Regev, the chief IDF spokesman, that it was against a military target, that they were worried that units were moving.
Yeah. I mean, in all of this as well, and I know it's sort of speculation moving forward, but the idea is, of course, that Gazans who've been displaced can start heading back and all the rest of it. Heading back to what?
This is the thing. This is the great unknown, particularly to northern Gaza, north of this line called the Netzarim Corridor, the Netzarim Line, which is almost unknown territory. It's a sort of a no-person land, and we're getting very, very little intelligence about it. We know that the agencies, from the UN through to the main NGOs, are extremely worried about conditions there, because there do seem to be conditions of actual starvation there. And, of course, the way things happen, that the utilities, and it's not just utilities, by that we mean sewage and water, must be contaminated and extremely difficult. It's a very big problem. It's a stressed 2 million population.
Yeah. We're just waiting on these names to be released, Robert, of these three.
Yeah.
So you suspect it's these three female IDF spotters or whatever who were captured. You mentioned a couple of hours ago regional pressure, and Saudi in all of this.
Saudi is the big one.
Yeah.
Saudi is crucial to...
What pressure can they apply?
Well, it's very difficult to say. They don't want to get involved in the fight because they are, as we know, Khashoggi, that they absolutely abhor anything to do with the Muslim Brotherhood. This is grassroots Sunni militancy, and they are the Sunni regime. Both Netanyahu and Trump want a lot from Saudi Arabia. They want money, expertise, because Trump saw his crowning achievement of his first presidency in the region was the Abraham Accords, whereby Bahrain and another of the agencies and the UAE came on board for technical cooperation with Israel, which is what they want, particularly given the climatic conditions there. And they wanted a reciprocal investment and recognition. That's the big prize. And Saudi has held off that and held off that. And I think it's pretty clear long-term beyond Netanyahu, I think it's what Mohammed bin Salman would really want some kind of a rapprochement. But in the middle, and almost as much as a problem to them as it is to the Israelis, you've got Hamas and the 2 million Gazans.
All right.
Go for it.
Robert, one of the reports coming out is that one of the people who will be released today is Emily Damari.
Wow.
Oh, wow. That is quite...
Who is saying that? Do we know?
No, so we're being told... So this is coming...
Yeah, we've got the names.
Is that Israel or Hamas? The source?
I don't know. It's Hamas.
Yeah.
So it's Hamas. So one of,
that's very interesting.
So one is Emily Damari, then Romy Gonen and Doran Steinbrecher. I don't know if they're the three soldiers. I don't know.
I would know one is a soldier, I think. But what I would say is that is very cunning for Hamas, because that is to reach out to
Britain.
The UK. And remember the International Criminal Court and so on, and, you know, that's an appeal to lawfare Starmer. It's a very interesting subset to the whole story.
It is, isn't it?
Because she wasn't expected to be a priority. I'm sorry. I'm delighted for the family if this is the case. Absolutely, you know, that they're getting their daughter back. But it is quite a turnout. Yes. But it's typical of the region.
It's a nod
Can I
to
just
the
give
UK?
a health warning?
Yes.
We're thinking of this far too much in Northwest European Brit terms.
Yeah.
And it's whenever, you know, I dive into that very sticky pool of Middle East or even any Mediterranean politics, having at least one language, quite well there, and you realise you must stop thinking in the way that you might in the town council in Milton Keynes, for example. It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
I mean, this is intriguing.
But there would be a reason.
Oh, and somebody, it is somebody being tactically very smart.
Yes.
Wow.
With all of this.
Yeah.
Are there any American hostages?
There are. But I think dual citizenship, yes.
Right, which is interesting. You would have perhaps thought they may have been on the list.
Yeah. Maybe they can't find them.
No, well...
or have, immediate access to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's an interesting point in and of itself, because is there a danger that if they're... Because obviously there'll be plenty of observations and the drones and all the rest of it will still be observing things. How much will Israel be doing in terms of monitoring what's going on in movement to see where they are?
Totally. And they'll be using sensors and sound devices too.
Because you wonder, I mean, is it a legitimate concern to say, well, if they can locate them, they're going to send people in and... all hell to the ceasefire deal if they can get...
They have done that in the past, and some of it's not gone too well. You know, commando raids and being very compromised. It's awful what remains of the tunnels and so on. It's absolutely the defender's zone. And I think that certainly. But they'll be listening a lot, too. That's the crucial thing. As we learned from the whole denouement with Hezbollah, you know, that they'd been listening for a long time. So, yeah.
Well, that is progress, we hope, but we don't know. It's been announced by Hamas. And it hasn't been acknowledged.
Hamas where? In Qatar?
Exactly, no.
Well,
that's something else we don't know.
They've released it on the Telegram.
Yeah, which is critical to the whole thing.
Where would the focus be now? I mean, if those hostages are, one hopes, released today, where would that happen? Do we know?
Oh, we know, yes. Egypt. They'll go out across the Philadelphia corridor, go out through Rafah, and go right to the south. Yes, I believe the agency will be the Red Cross, Red Crescent.
Just to go through, Doran Steinbrecher, 31, was a veterinary nurse and was in her apartment in the Kfar Aza kibbutz when Hamas attacked.
Yeah.
Romy Gonan, 24, was ambushed trying to escape from that supernova festival that you'd be aware of, and, of course, Emily Denari.
So they are three people who have been hostages since October the 7th.
Yes,
all that long ago. Yeah. And the last we saw of Emily Denari was that she was being handcuffed and shoved into her own car, I think, and then the terrorists drove off with her.
Yeah.
And that's the last we've ever known, and it would be terrific, wonderful news if indeed we hear of her and others being released today.
Right, we're going to keep you fully up to date with all of this. Robert, you'll be pleased to know he's not going to go anywhere. In the meantime, let's just catch up with a little bit of European weather for you.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hello. Well, if it's some winter sunshine you're after across Europe, it's not all that promising. There's a lot of unsettled weather around. So there's heavy spells of rain across parts of Madeira and Spain and Portugal with this area of low pressure. Another area of low pressure across central Mediterranean, bringing outbreaks of rain, strong winds and even some mountain snow. Best of the sunshine really confined towards Eastern Europe, otherwise staying largely unsettled. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Figures released by the National Child Measurement Programme in 2024 found that almost 1 in 10 children was obese in the first year of school. Children living in deprived areas are twice as likely to be overweight as those in more affluent parts. Organisations like the Prepped Foundation are educating youngsters about healthy eating by giving them the skills to create balanced meals. TV chef James Golding has joined the foundation as the head of food education, and he joins me now to talk about the work. James, lovely to see you here.
Good to see you too. So Prepped used to be Table Talk Foundation, and it's now obviously Prep for Life, Prep for Knowledge. It's basically a charity to encourage kids to have a better understanding of food, but at the same time enjoy cooking and hopefully make better food choices in their life, as well as perhaps share the information we give them with their families.
Do you see them developing an understanding of the difference between between a healthy and unhealthy food.
Yes, I think that, kids tend to sort of be taught a lot of this in school, but being able to actually ask questions to a chef and be able to cook with produce which they know is one, that is going to be tasty because they've tasted it, but two, open their eyes to food that they may not have tried before. I think that, I think a lot of kids say they don't want to try stuff because they don't like the way it looks, but the way that we produce our sessions, we encourage the kids to try, and I think it really does open their eyes. It's very easy, I think, currently to be able to make easier choices, say fast food choices or that type of thing, and it's obviously giving people the ability to make the right choices, but also the skills to be able to do it. So I think it's something that needs to be addressed and something that really needs to be pushed, and that's what we're doing as a charity.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, there's lots of breaking news this morning in relation to the Israel-Gaza ceasefire. It was off. We don't know that it's back on again at this stage. However, names have been released of 3 hostages who could be released today, one of whom is the British-Israeli citizen Emily Denari. So that is a really positive sign that this could be getting back on track.
Yeah. Robert Fox is still with us. And the question we want to know, I suppose, is, and a lot of people, we weren't expecting Emily Denari to be released today. She was on the list originally, but we weren't expecting her to be released today. Why would there she is there, look. Why would Hamas or Israel or somebody be demanding that she be one of the first?
I think it's being nice to Britain. I think that Hamas thinks that they can play the British government, more moderate in their terms, more close, although, with the various stances they have taken on Israel and Israel's conduct of operations, the war in Gaza, I think that it's rather atypical. It's the way politics work there as well. My friend is my friend at the moment, my enemy's enemy. It could possibly be my friend for a bit. And it's that kind of thing. But
Robert,
it also...
Robert, just to say, and for our radio listeners, we've got live pictures of another explosion in Gaza. That's the same camera that saw that we saw
the other one.
It's
a very similar explosion.
It is very similar. What are we to make of it? Because we don't know if this was something from Israel, but if it was, at this stage, that would seem pretty... put even more strain on this.
Puts more strain on it because Regari, the spokesman for the Israel military, said that there is a delay, and if it goes on, military operations could be resumed. Then we heard after the first explosion of about an hour ago, this was against a threatening military target, and I think we'll hear the same formula this time. So they're quite worried. The other thing is that we have seen a lot of gunmen on the street. Funny enough, they're not doing the usual celebratory thing of firing off ammunition, but a lot of them in trucks, masked men. But it's not clear what they're doing. They're certainly not protecting the civilian population because they've been mobbed by the civilians. We've seen some drone shots of this. So,
well, I guess
we've used the word chaos. It's pretty chaotic.
Yeah, they don't know what's happening either, do they?
No. It's quite clear that with the announcement of the names, that the Trump team had said to Netanyahu and to Hamas, get the show back on the road again. And that's where we get the gesture. Whether it's sufficient. And to add to the spin is that Netanyahu, as we know, in this period, since the first deadline, has lost one of his hardline ministers. He's lost Ben-Gvir, who's walked out. We knew Ben-Gvir didn't like the deal at all, but had allegedly decided to stay on until after the first 6 weeks period is over.
OK, Robert, thank you. I know that was very brief, but we are going to be back with you for a little bit more analysis in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We were talking earlier about the issue of Siri listening to you. Well, it's not just your own conversations being sort of harvested for data, but it's a problem with AI. So what seems to have happened yesterday is that Apple issued a alert saying that Luke Littler had won the darts before he had. I mean, imagine what would, if he then gone on to lose, how that would have looked. I mean, obviously, because he went on to win, at least they got the story right, but before it had happened. So what it seems to happen is that the AI farms existing stories, and what it has done, that's the alert. We can see the alert there now, and it also claiming that Brazilian tennis player Rafael Nadal had come out as gay, when actually a different Brazilian tennis player was actually mentioned in the original story. So what it does is you see that's branded as BBC Sport. What the Apple AI system does is it farms alerts that it thinks people are getting from the source, and then summarises them into
one. That's going to be my question.
Into one
it
alert.
Looks to me like you would assume, OK, the BBC are reporting this.
Absolutely.
So the BBC News might be saying something else.
So it could happen to any news organisation.
This has highlighted a massive issue. I mean, having editorial judgment and quality control, because if this is going on, it's just contributing to the flow of misinformation. Yes. And we know that this is a problem on social media, people reporting false things. But if it seems to come from trusted news sources, that is a massive issue in credibility. I mean, if you had something like Reuters, who's a big news provider, doing this, you could hold people accountable, you could make changes, but when it's the AI doing it, I mean, what do? You're going to have to reprogram it in some way.
And if you just lost control, if you're a news source, you've lost control of what goes out, because it basically farms it, puts your logo on it, and sends it out, even when it's nonsense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good morning, and what a morning it's already been. We were expecting a ceasefire to start in Gaza at 6:30. It didn't quite happen. It was put off. But now the very latest news is that we understand that 3 women prisoners, hostages, are going to be released today. And we've been given their names, and one of them is the British hostage, Emily Damari. There she is. And the other ones are Doran Steinbrecher, a veterinary nurse, who's 31, and Romy Gonen, who's 24, who was at that music festival, all taken on October the 7th and have been hostages ever since.
Robert Fox from the Evening Standard is here. What we haven't had, Robert, is confirmation that this deal is back on.
No, we've had early on the spokesman, the chief spokesman now of the Israeli Armed Forces, Daniel Regev, saying it was delayed, it would go ahead, but the Israeli forces were postured to attack. We've seen 2 big explosions, probably drone strikes. We understand they claim it was against military targets. The first time around, 8 were killed, according to the Hamas health authority. In the meantime, we have had a key member of the right wing of the coalition government, Itamar Ben-Gvir, security minister, resigning. He'd been expected to go, but not until after the first phase. So that has put Netanyahu in a difficult position. It's been stop-start, contradictory messages have been coming from Hamas, I guess, both in the political headquarters in Qatar and in the Gaza Strip. And I think the message, because the Trump team must be hitting the phones, they must be scorching, have been saying, get the show on the road. And that must have been the message to Netanyahu. Now, Netanyahu, within the next hour or two, must speak. He must speak to Israel and to the world and say what the hell is going on, because there is such confusion. We've seen gunmen on the streets in Gaza, but not doing anything, as thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of Gazans have tried to move north back to the desert, which was once their home in the northern part of the Strip, which has been some of the most contested ground in this whole dreary, very, very long, very bloody war.
It's a clever game, just very briefly, Robert, isn't it? The idea that these names are out there now. If this deal isn't worked on and these people released today, they're going to blame Israel.
Yes.
Including Britain.
It's real... psychological warfare. We have speculated during the programme so far whether they really know where they all are, and I think that still remains a big problem.
OK.
All 94 hostages, dead or alive.
Robert, thank you. Good to see you.
OK, we'll be back with you at the top of the hour. Here's the weather.
Imagine how £50,000 in cash from us could make your new year go with a bang.
Hi, my name's Victoria. I won the Spring Great British giveaway. So the day we got the money in our bank account, everything just felt a lot lighter. I would say if you're thinking about entering, just enter.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And then fashionistas are keen to see which new trends are set to hit the catwalk.
Well, our next guest is very well placed to share her predictions with us after being a contestant on hit ITV series Dress the Nation, as well as being an upcycling and sewing consultant.
Wow. Joining us now is Tendai Murewe. I want to go back to you appearing on the ITV Dress the Nation.
Right.
Tell us about that experience. What was that like?
Oh, that was one of my highlights as an upcycling consultant. I learned to sew in my kitchen 5 years ago. And then, during COVID, just making masks. Then the next thing I was on a Dress the Nation, making dresses in front of TV. Yeah, it was just incredible. I think we all had all these clothes that we have, but we don't know what to do with them. So mainly I started with men's jackets, taking off the sleeves and putting it like a print on.
I've tried this. I've tried taking off my sleeves before. I now have about 3 jackets with no sleeves. I never managed to put them back on.
You need to come to a workshop.
You
need to come to a workshop.
I need an upcycling consultant. 2025, what can we expect fashion-wise?
I think bold prints are back. People are loving. I think you walk on the streets in frollals and oversized men's jackets.
So the exact opposite. We have drastically underperformed this morning. You're just saying not like us.
We just woke up this morning and thought it's winter, it's cold, it's grey.
Grey, miserable.
Is that not the way to go?
No, it is. I think because fashion is expressive. It's whatever you want to express yourself.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning. Well, the breaking news today, and Hamas has released the names of 3 hostages set to be freed today.
And included in that list is the British hostage, Emily Damari.
Meanwhile, one of Israel's hardline ministers, Ben Gvir, resigns. Is that a sign that the ceasefire could be back on at some point today?
And then, of course, you've got to remember history is going to be made shortly. Donald Trump has shrugged off the protests and arrived in Washington for tomorrow's inauguration. Will the ceasefire disruption dampen celebration plans or actually make them?
Will you see any sunshine today, or will you be stuck underneath the gloomy skies? I'll have all of the latest in the forecast coming up.
It's just gone 9 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ann Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Right, let's try to bring you up to date with the breaking news this morning, and it has all changed in the last couple of hours. The Israel-Hamas ceasefire that was meant to start at 6:30 UK time this morning was delayed after Hamas failed to release a list of hostage names.
And then, finally, Hamas did release those names to mediators for the first day of the ceasefire deal. 3 names, and among them is British-Israeli citizen Emily Damari.
Well, the IDF spokesperson earlier said Israel is ready to commence the ceasefire as long as Hamas meets their demands. That's all to do with the list. Now, Hamas said it couldn't release that list, which it actually should have done 24 hours ago because of what they called technical field reasons.
Well, we're joined now by, well, we've been joined all morning, haven't we, by Defence Editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. My goodness, how things can change in 2.5 hours.
It's like the traditional emotion of a kid at a pantomime. It goes up and down and all around the thing.
So where are we at this stage?
I knew you were going to ask me that question. Is it on, is it off? I think it's sort of on-ish, off-ish. We're halfway through. And the key figure is Trump now. Trump will be saying to Hamas, but more importantly to Netanyahu, what are you going to do? What does the resignation, which you trailed in the headlines, which is significant because he was the hardest of the hardliners in the government, Itamar Ben-Gvir, the fact that he's decided to go early and go dramatically, and we'll be hearing a statement, I am sure, from him very soon, is that significant? But it is the art of the deal, and Trump, I think, will go for broke, and he will want to be able to announce some kind of deal by the time in his inauguration speech.
Because you sort of question why Ben-Gvir would go if the ceasefire wasn't going to happen.
Yes, and that's the important thing, because he had hinted that he was going for almost as long as the war's been going on, because he kept on saying that Netanyahu wasn't prosecuting it hard enough. Smash Hamas, that's the aim. You're not getting anywhere near it. And he'd already said after the first 6 weeks period, and we've got the hostages out, he and his ally, Mr. Smotrich, the finance minister, said, no, we want the war to resume because we've got to the war aim of smashing, eradicating Hamas, has not been fulfilled. The fact that he hasn't waited the 42 days and has gone now is interesting. And it looks as if Netanyahu is saying, I need to bet on my survival with more moderate members of my government, like Gideon Saar, the new foreign minister, and we've got support in getting this deal through. And there might not be one after it. We need the opposition to help us, or I am gratefully accepting the offer of help from Mr. Lapid, the leader of the opposition in the Knesset.
Can we look at the 3 hostages who we hope are going to be released today? Now we've had their names not confirmed, actually. It's still Hamas has released the names. But
no, just to say Israel has confirmed that.
That's brilliant, then. Yeah. That's brilliant news that 3 hostages are going to be...
We want to know the rest of the list, too.
But earlier we were saying, why can't they, instead of... Yes, we want to see the list, but why can't they just move things forward by releasing somebody? Have these 3... Do you think these 3 were intended to be released today, or have they just, in the end, gone for 3 that they can locate and release them to get things moving? You don't know. No, you can't know, I suppose, can you?
Sorry. Get me South Gaza. Yeah, no, it's so difficult to work out, because we had been led to believe they were going to release the soldiers, the female soldiers. So, and I'd been confidently, and shouldn't have been so confident in predicting it earlier in the programme. And it is a list of 33. Now you're going to ask me the question, and it is the question. Do you have a list of 33? are they 33 people who can be released, that you know where they are, and you can get them through the lines and get them out through the crossing in the south into Egypt? Big remark, but I just go back to my latest refrain. Trump will be saying, get the show on the road, because it's local for you. It's absolutely global for me, because I've got to send the message out the way my transactional presidency is going to operate. It's going to operate on similar lines in Ukraine, and above all, dealing with China. Sorry to pull it out, but this is what goes on in Trump world now.
There's so many layers to all of this. This is the problem. And is it a legitimate question to say or to ask? Damari's release, as hugely welcome as it is, if it happens today, is that psychological warfare? Is that in effect saying Netanyahu's got to act now? He's got to engage with this ceasefire, because otherwise, amongst other things, there'll be even more pressure from the UK.
Yeah. The UK is a player that very often, I don't know whether it will happen with the Trump team, because we had some very interesting observations about the way they've set up the diplomatic team in Washington from Freddie Gray. And I agree with him entirely. I think they made a terrible mistake in bringing Karen Pierce back and sending Mandelson, because it doesn't seem to me that that's the way it operates. Karen is a terrific operator, and she'd got the confidence. I mean, she got a channel open to Trump. She's invited to the ceremony, which shows, the regard in which she has held. I think that they're saying to the Brits, and I think it's very clever of Hamas saying, you're in this as well. We know you have discrete interest. You are, you're Robin to Donald Trump's Batman, and you've got interest, Jordan, Cyprus, with the Houthis particularly, because of the British role in running the organisation of maritime shipping. Hamas can be plenty sophisticated about it, and it's an interesting curveball to throw in this. I would be fascinated what they're going to say to the Northern Europeans, who are less significant. They don't have the past, but France is particularly important, as we know, to the North, Lebanon and so on. But Britain really is important. It's not just the vestiges of an old past. It's an old past which informs a new future. And it's going to be a test of this very soft approach, soft power rather than hard power, of the Starmer regime. Of the Starmer regime. Sorry, words chosen carefully.
Yes. Yeah. I can't help but look at the 3 hostages who are hopefully going to be released today and think it's a popular choice as well, isn't it? It's not 3 soldiers. It's
a veterinary nurse, a young kid going to a festival, to a festival,
and Emily there in the middle, and who was living the beautiful life in a kibbutz in Israel.
Absolutely.
And I can't help but think, I mean, I don't know, I'm reading too much into it, as you can do in this vacuum, but it's a very popular choice, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think that, sorry, we have to say it, one thing that all parties in this that we're talking about, whether it's Netanyahu particularly and Hamas, they are very media savvy. And it's old media, and it's very interesting we're talking about, sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but when they're closing down TikTok, allegedly, in the US, I mean, the media mix, I mean, I would love to know what the Arab channels, which I appear on quite a lot, and they are, as the Italians say, molto pilotato, they are very, very driven politically. I'd love to know what they're saying about all this now.
Yeah, I know, it's going to be interesting to see, isn't it? We're talking about these 3. That means there's still 30 people.
They've got to come up with that, yes.
They've got to come up with, and they've got to presumably come up with that quite quickly now in order to keep the next 6 weeks on track.
Is this just a holding operation? But I think the question that we have raised, we 3 here, is absolutely, can they do it? Are they talking a big fight? Is it all mouth and no dish dash or no trousers on this? And there has been a tendency, particularly in the diplomacy driven for Hamas from Qatar, that they quite often haven't been able to deliver. I mean, they've been talking this deal, in its broad outlines, was on the table last May, and it all went wrong.
Which, again, it goes back to that question, doesn't it? Whatever is agreed in Qatar, whatever diplomacy goes on with this, it's the people on the ground, it's the operatives who we just don't know if they actually want to play ball as much as anything else.
We don't really know who's in charge because there's been this rumour, and it can't be upgraded to anything more than a rumour, that it's Yahya Sinwar's brother, Mohammed, who's really in charge of operations. And yet I read sort of, you know, in the trash talk on social media that perhaps even he may be dead. So nobody really knows. But there are these fighting units, and they're broken up. It's classic guerrilla warfare, insurgency, where you operate in tight cells with minimum communication. There's a very thin command structure there, if one at all, but it's only needed to get ammunition and supplies in.
But as you were saying earlier, it is time now for Netanyahu to show leadership by actually addressing the nation.
He's got to do it.
And telling us all what's going on.
And he's got to do it well before Trump speaks, and Trump will speak as the sun comes up in Washington. He will make his views known.
The reports, are these just reports? Oh, here we go. So, this is according to the Israeli Prime Minister's office, Robert. The ceasefire will go into effect at 11:15 local time, so that's in literally 3 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, let's wait. I think, by the way, this is going to be a pattern for the day.
Yeah.
Delay, push, pull, yeah.
Well, I mean, if that... It's a case of if it
but
holds...
Can I just pull back and say, look, what I really felt... Yeah, pull back. This shows there is a sense of urgency, doesn't it, Anne, Stephen?
Yeah, I would...
Both Qatar and Tel Aviv, Jerusalem feel they may really, really be in the last chance saloon.
And Trump will be telling them that.
Yeah, and I think that's what's probably going on now.
Because it's not just a case, is it, then, of saying, well, actually, all fighting would resume and all hell would break out, but actually the implications from Trump potentially pulling some support away from Israel.
Yeah. Because that's his message to Europe over Ukraine, too. Absolutely, that's the way he does it.
Yeah. So but it's this awful thing, as you're saying then, so if that ceasefire comes into play in exactly 2 minutes from now, and we get those hostages out, presumably pretty quickly off the bat, you'd want to see...
Well, within the hour, we have to know those three girls, those three ladies,
we have to see them.
Are heading for that southern crossing.
But that's no guarantee this is going to hold for the day. I mean, is it that tentative?
Can I go home?
No, I don't think you can. I don't think you can.
But no, it's going to be like that. It's going to be drip, drip from now on. And but Trump will be saying, with his characteristic impatience, will be saying, come on, can you get the show on the road? This really is the last chance for you. Because I'm not going to invest 3 years of my presidency in sending people backwards and forwards all the way around the Gulf and the Middle East to the UN, to Geneva, to whatever. And I've got other things to do and other things on my mind. And I've got the migration problem. I've got the cost of living. I've got, I'm not particularly liking Canada and Mexico at the moment. I've got the Panama Canal. I've got Greenland. You go on. And that's why he will not want this to be the great obstacle in the road.
But also, what a tremendous feather in his cap. If basically through his pressure, before his presidency even begins...
Well, that was spectacular. It really was, yeah.
It just goes to show people like him or not, he's a remarkable character in some ways.
Yeah.
Well, let's not count our chickens.
Yeah.
I guess.
No,
but it's only like, half a minute now to when that ceasefire is going to be, I was going to say resumed, but it never really happened.
No, it's never really happened, has it? No.
It's going to start. And meanwhile, the families of those 3 hostages must be absolutely on tenterhooks, just praying that it's actually going to happen for them.
Well, this could well be the longest sort of hour of their lives, couldn't it? Waiting to get this and get these people crossed into the Egyptian border. These live scenes over Gaza, it's where we've seen explosions, actually, over the last couple of hours or so. All quiet at the moment, and that ceasefire between Israel and Hamas should be enforced.
Well, now we're on it. So delayed.
Technically in the ceasefire now.
Yeah, we are in that ceasefire. But as you say, Robert, everything to play for now. Hamas has now got to deliver on that? So within, as you say, a pretty short period of time.
I hope that strapline was from older news.
It was, yeah. It's just.
I think we should update that as quickly as we can. Whew. Clear skies.
Yeah.
Never has a clear, foggy sky been more welcome.
Yeah. So everyone's going to be on tenterhooks now,
yeah,
aren't they?
Yeah.
9:15. It's meant to have happened. The ceasefire.
Yeah, underway. What goes on next then, Robert? In terms of, I mean, it's logistics in getting these 3 girls out,
getting that process going, and getting aid in. But what is ominous is it.
No, this is we're just reaffirming.
They're catching up on you.
yes, they are.
Yeah.
But this is just. Yeah. It's getting that aid in. It's getting the balance.
You're
then.
absolutely right. It is so complicated, and there are so many risks there because we have been seeing credible first-hand reports of a complete breakdown. You know, that they insist on flatbed trucks. Flatbed trucks are just, you know, that 90% of the flatbed trucks are robbed.
Yeah. Which is hugely problematic. But again, even so, that massive increased amount of aid which will go in as a result of this ceasefire deal, it's again policing it when it gets in there. That problem is still going to exist.
Absolutely, yeah.
At the moment, we're looking at live pictures from Gaza, and I guess the good sign is that it appears that nothing is happening.
Nothing is happening.
Which is hopefully the good sign and the confirmation that the ceasefire has now started. 9:15, Benjamin Netanyahu's office said the ceasefire would start.
2 3/4 hours behind, but which isn't bad, actually, given the
And it appears at the moment that nothing is happening, which at the moment is good news.
So,
the next news we want is when we're going to see the release of those 3 hostages.
Yeah, and hopefully, as Robert says, within the next hour or so would be good. Anyway, going to be covering all of this, and all the politics ties into all of this today, doesn't it? Camilla Tominey is going to be here at 9:30. It's been a roller coaster of a morning so far, Camilla.
Oh, we can't hear her at the moment.
Can't hear.
We will
Of course, be covering it ourselves when we go live at 9:30 with my own show. I'll be speaking to Darren Jones, who's the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. I'll also be speaking to Priti Patel, who is going to be speaking to us from Washington, D.C. ahead of the inauguration of President Trump on Monday night. But her perspective as Shadow Foreign Secretary is interesting, not least when we've got mixed reports about how Trump is feeling about Starmer's administration, even suggestions, and I know Robert touched on this earlier, with regard to the UK's ambassador to the US and whether Trump will actually accept Peter Mandelson. When you look at the situation in the Middle East and what it actually means, not just for the world, but also US relations globally, for defence spending, for the US's relationship with the UK, it's quite telling. Unhelpfully, I would suggest, in the midst of all this, we've had the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, referring to Trump's presidency in the terms of it being a resurgence of fascism, which I wouldn't imagine is particularly useful rhetoric right now. I'm also going to be speaking to the Tory MP David Davis for his insight, speaking to the former Defence Minister Tobias Ellwood, who's also in Washington, D.C. And we need to stick to domestic matters as well as global. I'll be speaking to John Moynihan, the Tory peer, who has been very critical of Rachel Reeves's growth plan, says actually if this economic policy continues, Britain is only going to get poorer and poorer. So all of that to come at 9:30, and of course covering any hostage releases as they happen.
Camilla, sorry. This one must have flown past me at some point. Sadiq Khan has said the inauguration of Donald Trump tomorrow is a resurgence of fascism. And he's saying that as pressure from Donald Trump, and it's undisputable, is bringing about this ceasefire in Israel.
Yeah, so the rhetoric that Khan has been peddling in the last 24 hours is on the front of the Observer newspaper, basically warning that Trump 2.0 could result in a resurgence of fascism. And, I mean, you know, there are some who are suggesting that if peace is brokered in the Middle East and it's because Trump has put the pressure on, all hell will break out if the hostages aren't released by the time I have my inauguration on Monday night, combined with his boasts, admittedly, about Ukraine and Russia. But again, if there's a solution there, then I would suggest that it probably isn't a resurgence to fascism, but actually a degree of peacekeeping from the two-time US president, isn't it?
You would think so.
Yes.
I mean, that's how it appears to be. It just seems very odd rhetoric to be using.
He's not reading the room, is he, very much? But he is continuing his sort of rhetoric. There are lots of questions to be asked of him, too, at the moment. But I think, meanwhile, we just sort of wait with bated breath for something positive to come out of the Middle East.
Well, so hopefully in your show, Camilla, we'll see the first of those hostages.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll see you at 9:30. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah,
not long to
crossed.
Yeah, not long to wait for that. So this is the situation we're in this morning, where that ceasefire was meant to begin at 6:30 our time today, and that list, that crucial list of the 33 hostages to be freed within the next 6 weeks wasn't forthcoming. But now we've got 3 names, and as a result of that, the ceasefire is back on. 6 minutes ago.
We are told that those 3 hostages will be released around 2 p.m.
Whether that's our time or Israeli time,
well, there, because if it's Israeli time, it'll be 2 p.m. UK time, we're just being told,
Right, so a bit of a wait for that, but at least there's a timetable for that. Big question now is, of course, what about those other 30 names on the list? And the problem there seems to be from the Hamas leadership, which is in Qatar, being totally distanced and not knowing what's going on from the people on the ground. Do they know where the people are? Do they know how many people are still alive? It's a huge number of problems there, but clearly it's been given a chance to work today. So that's got to be something for which we can be thankful.
Yes, and of course anticipating a very big historic day tomorrow when Donald Trump, for the second time, will be inaugurated as President of the United States.
It's all going on.
It really is. There's an awful lot going on. I'll tell you what, we've got a bit of housekeeping to do as we say goodbye to you. Of course, the programme has been completely dominated by the unfolding news from Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and Gaza. But we come back to our giveaway, £50,000 in tax-free cash. You can't win it if you're not in it, and here's how.
Imagine how £50,000 in cash from us could make your new year go with a bang.
Hi, my name's Victoria. I won the Spring Great British giveaway. So the day we got the money in our bank account, everything just felt a lot lighter. I would say if you're thinking about entering, just enter.
For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, we hold on to the cloudy theme and feeling cold with some rain for some in the west. So through this morning and the rest of the afternoon, then a cloudy picture across much of the UK with drizzle and perhaps even some snow grains just moving their way northwards into the Midlands. Further towards the north, as particularly across northern parts of Scotland, that's where we'll see the best of the sunshine through this afternoon, with rain gradually trying to approach from the west into Northern Ireland and western parts of Scotland. Otherwise, a cold feeling day, especially underneath this blanket of cloud, mildest temperatures further towards the west. As we go through Sunday evening and overnight, then we hold on to the clearest skies across northern and eastern parts of Scotland. Temperatures quickly falling away here, perhaps with a touch of frost. We'll start to see this weather front approach the Western Isles, bringing some rain, and for western parts of Northern Ireland as well, but colder across northern England and Wales. We may see some breaks in the cloud to give a touch of frost.